Chapter 1850. The one who is truly frightening. This figure looked neither tall nor imposing, and the aura that he emanated was nothing special. Yet, his appearance caused the two sides fighting to halt their attacks and freeze on the spot, not daring to move at all. What's wrong? The crowd in the square were all bewildered by this turn of events. Had they not been fighting one another to the death just a moment ago? Why would they suddenly stop just because a person said a word? That person must have sealed the surrounding space or used some kind of special power to suppress them, causing them to be unable to make a move. An elder amid the crowd clenched his fists tightly as he remarked contemplatively. He had heard that those who had reached St. 9 Dan Macrocosm Ascendancy realm would often use the sealing of space as one of their offensive means to corner their opponents. It was very likely that the figure who had just appeared had used such a method on the new sovereign Chen Yong and his assassins. Otherwise, why would both sides suddenly halt their attacks in unison, as if they had planned it in advance? If that figure is able to seal the movements of the new sovereign Chen Yong and the others all at once, just how powerful must he be? Could that person possibly be Sovereign Chen Yong's deity mentor? Now that you mention it, the silhouette of that figure does seem to resemble the person from that day. During the battle back then, they flew too high, so I didn't manage to get a good look. However, it's very likely him. No wonder he's able to render everyone motionless and incapable of battling. The crowd widened their eyes in realization as or filled their gazes. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates, better experience. Please click for visiting. If they had been skeptical to have heard from the storytellers that Sovereign Chen Yong had a mentor whose strength matched the deities, after seeing such a sight, all of their doubts dissipated. The might wielded by that person had likely surpassed even their wildest imagination. How is it? Some of the ancient sages hidden amid the crowd communicated via telepathy. I can't see through that person's cultivation, but his very feat of halting so many experts simultaneously shows that his strength definitely exceeds the blood reincarnation realm. Is it really possible for such powerful experts to exist in our world? Don't forget Sovereign Vicious and Kong Shi. Back in their era, our cultivation would have meant nothing to them at all. You're right. The opening of Temple of Confucius and the descent of a deity, it wouldn't be too surprising for any astoundingly powerful experts to appear at this moment. To be able to execute a spatial seal while eluding all of our notice simultaneously, making it appear as if he hasn't done anything at all. I cannot fathom just how powerful he truly is. Some of the ancient sages hidden amid the crowd were in intense discussions with one another. The more they talked about the matter, the paler their faces became. Just the fact that they were unable to see through the cultivation of the silhouette in the sky was already a major cause of fear for them all. Of course, there was a chance that they could be overthinking it, but given the spectacular might displayed by that figure during the major battle a month ago, it was inevitable that they would be so fearful. To be able to kill a deity from a higher dimension just by tossing a random book at him. If that person was able to draw forth so much power just by tossing a book, they could not imagine just what would happen if he threw a sword or a spear at them instead. Teacher. Upon seeing the approaching figure, Liu Yang did not dare move. Just as he was wondering what his teacher was going to do, he saw the latter walking up to Zheng Yang, and without any warning, the latter lifted up his feet and threw a kick right toward Zheng Yang's chest. Zheng Yang's body cowered in fear at that kick, but before he could even react at all, he was sent flying into the ground. Just what the heck were you doing earlier? If you'd stopped that spear by a third of a breath, its might would have increased exponentially. Yet, you just had to rush your way into it. Are you that short for time? Are you rushing to be reincarnated? And you? What the hell were you flinging your sword around for? Where's your sword chi? Where's your sword intent? Do you really expect to get to your opponent with such a half-assed move? As for you, are you a dimwit? Do you think that you are invincible just because your defense is superior to that of others? Using your own chest to block a punch, are you very proud of your valiance? What happened to your fist? Just where in the world has your head gone to? All you know is to ram your way around. Are you a buffalo incapable of thought? You bunch of wastrels. Can you even call that a battle? Even if I gathered a bunch of pigs and trained them for 3 days, they would be able to do much better than the lot of you. The more Zhong Xian thought about it, the more infuriated he became. It was to the point where he was pointing fingers at each of his disciples and berating them viciously. Did my teachings go in one ear and out the other ear? It was just a short few days, and look at what has become of your skills. I'd die of embarrassment if anyone found out that you're my direct disciples. As a proud master teacher, how did I manage to produce a bunch of fools like you lot? Hearing their teacher's reprimand, the faces of Zhao Ya, Zheng Yang, and the others turned red in embarrassment. If there was pit in the ground, they might have dived right in. They had thought that their teacher would be proud of them after all their training over the past 2 months, but who could have known that they would still incur his wrath? However, they knew that what their teacher had said made sense. Even though their cultivation had advanced significantly, they had ended up neglecting their own skills instead, causing their moves to be all over the place. Otherwise, with each of them putting their strengths together, they should have been able to defeat the new sovereign Chen Yong with ease. After berating Zheng Yang and the others, Zhongxian turned to Liu Yang and began criticizing him from head to toe. You're equally bad as well. Just what in the world were you trying to pull? Cowering indecisively at every move. Is that the kind of sovereign you want to become? Sovereign my ass. There's a complete lack of soul in your movements. If you charged right in to stand against the rest of them earlier, you would have been able to shatter her sword and knock that brat's spear flying easily, thus ending the battle in an instant. You wouldn't have ended up facing so much trouble later on. Just a month of absence, and his cultivation had gone completely haywire. He had nearly fumed himself to death. He should have been a really cultured and patient person, but seeing this group of fellows messing around, he simply lost his cool. Teacher, Liu Yang's face flushed red as he attempted to speak, but he was unable to say a thing at all. Not wanting to waste his breath, Zhongxian waved his hand and said, Enough. I'll take these fellows away. Continue your inauguration, and come look for me after you are done. Hula. Zhao Ya and the others were immediately thrown into the myriad ant hive nest before Zhongxian vanished from the spot. That was such an epic battle, but in the eyes of that person, it was actually utter nonsense. Such that he lost his patience and interfered in the midst of the duel to offer his pointers. So, the reason he halted the battle was because he found the battle too unsightly and couldn't watch on? But that was such a profound battle. If he couldn't stand watching something like that, wouldn't we be utterly destroyed if we dared make a move? The crowd beneath trembled in horror, unable to say a word at all. Just by the scale of the battle between Sovereign Chen Yong and the assassins, this was already an event that was worthy of being recorded and honored as a classic for the next tens of thousands of years. Yet, in the eyes of that deity, it was no different from a bunch of kids playing house. This fact was extremely hard for them to accept even though they had just witnessed it with their own eyes. Leader, are we still going to make a move? An ancient sage amid the crowd suddenly asked. Make a move your head. I didn't even understand the battle that just happened earlier. If we make a move, won't we be smacked to death? Relay my orders. From today onward, no matter what orders Sovereign Chen Yong passes, our lineage will obey them unconditionally, and no one is to voice the slightest opposition. The leader ordered through gritted teeth. It might have appeared as though the other party was just making a couple of casual remarks, but through his sharp eye of discernment, the leader could tell that those words were filled with ingenuity. Even just comprehending a small portion of the wisdom behind what had been said would leave one feeling deeply enlightened. Are you seriously asking me if we should make a move after witnessing that person's vast wisdom in the art of fighting? You dolt. Grow a brain or two. What we should be doing right now is not moving at all. If you wish to see the crimson moon rise in the north tomorrow, you should remain deathly silent. The same scene could be seen all around the crowd. Even though the new sovereign Chen Yong had quelled his opposition with crushing might, there was no denying that his position still was not stable. There were many people who had wished to exploit this instability to earn some benefits. However, from the moment that the new sovereign Chen Yong's mentor appeared and sealed the space, keeping both sides frozen on the spot, before bellowing furiously at both sides for the inadequacies in their techniques. Well, there was probably nothing in the world that could dispel their courage as effectively as that did. They could see a tragic fate awaiting them if they dared rise up against the new sovereign Chen Yong. That was truly a terrifying mentor that the other party had. Chapter 1851 Zhongxian lectures. You bunch of buffoons. Have you forgotten the things that I have taught you over the past year? Glaring down at the row of kneeling students before him, Zhongxian bellowed wrathfully. Just looking at their faces sent his rage flying over the roof. If one wanted to advance further in ancient sage, one had to continuously temper one's cultivation, energy, and temperament. The continuous process of tempering would induce greater harmony within one's body, and only then would there be a sliver of hope for one to reach dimension shatter a realm and advance to a higher dimension. Yet, this bunch of fellows actually allowed their cultivation to surge on ahead without trying to suppress it in the least. And that wasn't the worst yet. How could the six of them nearly lose to Liu Yang despite collaborating with one another? This was utterly ridiculous. Just what in the world had they learned over the past year of tutelage? Could that even be called a collaboration at all? Even a bunch of pigs would do better than this under my tutelage. Teacher, you have taught us that we should value the cultivation of our character above everything else. Zheng Yang muttered softly, but his words were cut short by Zhongxian's dagger-like glare. Don't you bring that bunch of nonsense up now. We are talking about your studies here. Your heads sure have ballooned to the skies just because you have reached ancient sage. Zhongxian roared furiously. He turned to Lu Chong and instructed, you have the highest cultivation of them all. Use your strongest attack on me. Me? Lu Chong was taken aback. But teacher, you are only at sempiternal realm consummation. He was already at blood reincarnation realm whereas his teacher was still at sempiternal realm consummation. If he were to fail to control his strength and accidentally injure his teacher. Why? Are you underestimating your teacher now that you have gotten a little stronger? Zhongxian snapped at Lu Chong with an impatient tone. No, that's not what I mean. Lu Chong shook his head frantically in response. That would be for the best. Cut the crap and make your move. Zhongxian berated. Why yes. Gritting his teeth, Lu Chong drew his soul out from his glabella and charged at Zhongxian. Just the soul energy that was seeping from him in the surroundings was enough to raise a rampaging storm in the area. Zhao Ya and the others stared at the scene intently as they readied themselves to step in should it appear that their teacher was in a dangerous position. There was no questioning their teacher's capabilities and talents, but the gap between sempiternal realm and blood reincarnation realm was simply too big. If their teacher were to get injured due to their carelessness, they would really be heinous sinners. Just as everyone was worrying over Zhongxian, the person in question suddenly raised his arm and flicked it casually without sparing a glance over. Pada. Before Lu Chong could even react, his massive soul had already plummeted right into the ground. As if a massive boulder was weighing down on him, he found himself unable to move at all. Is this the might of a blood reincarnation realm cultivator which you are so proud of? Zhongxian raised his eyebrows. I. Lu Chong's face reddened as he found himself unable to speak a word at all. The others also widened their eyes in disbelief upon seeing that sight as well. They were well aware of the strength that Lu Chong wielded. He was the strongest amongst them, but even he was unable to withstand a casual slap from their teacher. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience please click for visiting. Was their teacher really at sempiternal realm consummation? Let's not waste time. All of you should just come at me together. Use the moves which you have intended to execute in order to curb the new sovereign Chen Yong against me. Zhongxian released the pressure on Lu Chong and harumphed. Yes. Zhao Ya, Zheng Yang, and the others glanced at one another before nodding in unison. If they were still worried about their teacher's safety previously, after seeing the latter rendering Lu Chong completely powerless in a single move, all of the doubts were dispelled from their minds. Despite having come so far, it was as if nothing had changed between them and their teacher. He was still berating them and lecturing them on their cultivation. Seeing this constant in their life left them with a mysterious but warm and fuzzy feeling within them. The six of them gathered swiftly aligned their auras together, causing the surrounding air to billow like rapid tides of the ocean. Hula. Zhao Ya was the first one to make a move. Sword Chi ravaged the area, sweeping across the surroundings with the ferocious might of a hurricane. At the same time, the other five also made their move as well in coordination with one another, making sure to seal off all blind spots and augmenting her attack to make it much sharper and more frightening. Standing in the midst of the storm, Zhongxian appeared like a lone lighthouse standing in the midst of the stormy seas, on the verge of being swallowed by the furious currents at any moment. From the viewpoint of an outsider, this wasn't a fair duel at all. With a nonchalant look on his face, Zhongxian suddenly took a step forward. Boom! It was as if the enormous waves had been tamed. The currents whipping across the air suddenly came to an abrupt halt. Zhao Yue, Zheng Yang, and the others retreated several steps as they felt a severe jolt in their internal zhenqi, causing their faces to turn pale. "This is your very first flaw," Zhongxian remarked as he walked forward slowly. "Continue." Zhao Yue and the others glanced at one another before encircling Zhongxian once more again. But before their collaboration could even fully form, Zhongxian snapped his fingers, and they were sent staggering back again. This time, they seemed to have sustained even more severe injuries from before. "Continue." Everyone was already on the verge of reaching their limits, but hearing the boiling rage behind their teacher's voice, they could only grit their teeth and carry on. Peng peng peng. Each and every single time, they would be knocked back with ease within 2 breaths. Injuries swiftly piled up on them, leaving them feeling as if they would collapse soon. It was several dozen rounds later before Zhongxian finally halted the sparring session. With a wave of his hand, he shot surges of Heaven's Path zhenqi from his fingertips into the bodies of his students. At the same time, he tossed a jade bottle into the sky and divided the blood essence within it amongst his students. Boom! Absorbing the blood reincarnation realm ancient sage blood allowed the students to swiftly recover their strength as their wounds quickly mended up and vanished. Under normal circumstances, their cultivation should surge forward as well, but for some reason, instead of increasing, it was starting to decline even. Within less than 10 minutes, Zheng Yang's ancient sage 2 dan great philosopher realm primary stage cultivation had fallen back to ancient sage 1 dan bloodline continuance realm consummation, and it was still continuing to plummet. Zhao Yue's cultivation also fell from bloodline continuance realm consummation down to completion. What was bewildering was that even though their cultivation had fallen, they found that their fighting prowess had advanced instead. This was especially so for Lu Chong. He had already reached blood reincarnation realm primary stage previously, but it had regressed back to great philosopher realm after his teacher's tempering. Despite so, he felt that his soul energy had grown much more compact, allowing him to exert even more devastating might in battle. Not only so, his soul was showing signs of assuming a corporeal form even. If he were to reveal himself, even a blood reincarnation realm cultivator would find it hard to believe that it was just a soul standing before him. The crux of cultivation lies neither in the speed of your cultivation or the strength you are able to exert. If you fail to build your foundation well, there's no way that you will get far. You would only be building sandcastles in the air. Seeing that his students had vaguely understood what he was trying to do, Zhongxian placed his hands behind his back and remarked deeply. Education was about guiding a person down a path that was most suited to him. His students were no longer fledglings who needed to be assisted every step of the way, but they were still prone to steer off the path once they were out of his tutelage. As such, he chose not to lecture them on their cultivation or force them to walk the same path as him. Instead, what he wanted to pound into them was the fact that cultivation was not something that one could rush within a short period of time. Patience was the key. This was similar to how, despite being stuck at sempiternal realm consummation for nearly a month, he didn't rush to achieve a breakthrough. Instead, he waited patiently for an impetus. My expectations for you don't just stop at just ancient sage. I want you to reach even greater heights, Zhongxian said solemnly. If you are unable to even reach Dimension Shatterer realm, there's no need for you to continue following me anymore. Lu Chong, I have given you so much soul energy that would allow you to build up a firm foundation, but you chose to devote all of it to furthering your cultivation. As a result, your soul energy became incredibly loose. Is this what I have taught you? In your current state, if you were to attempt to overcome your bottleneck after reaching blood reincarnation realm, you will be reduced by ashes by the lightning tribulation. Everyone hung their faces in shame. They thought that they would be complimented for the swift advancements in their cultivation, but who could have thought that it would actually be their failing instead? Nevertheless, This matter showed them how much their teacher cared for them, and it left their noses feeling a little sour. At this moment, something new began to blossom in their state of mind. Chapter 1852 The Sovereign of the Otherworldly Demonic Tribe. Alright, let's stop here today. Cultivate on your own, Zhongxian said. Beyond great sage, there was very little that he could help his students with through lecturing. What was more important was their own talent and hard work. It was because he had imparted too much to his students that they were losing the ability to create what was uniquely theirs, thus resulting in this farce. After cultivating for a while, Zhao Huaiye suddenly asked, "Teacher, is Sovereign Chen Yong your student as well?" The others also directed their gazes over. They had heard that the new Sovereign Chen Yong had a mentor comparable to the deities, and they had thought that it was a fabricated story for the latter to consolidate his power. Never in their wildest dream did they think that the so-called mentor would actually be their teacher. "You still haven't recognized him?" Zhongxian shook his head. "Recognize?" Everyone was taken aback. Wang Ying was the first to think of something, and her eyes widened in disbelief. With quivering lips, she asked, could it be that, his junior Liu Yang? For a while, she had been thinking that there was something weird about their battle with the new Sovereign Chen Yong. The latter clearly knew their flaws, and he had been able to exploit them in crucial moments to turn the tables. Such a thing could be attributed to coincidence if it had only happened once or twice, but the fact that it had continued throughout the battle was really something worth contemplating over. She had been wondering if they had crossed paths with the new Sovereign Chen Yong somewhere somehow, but if the other party was their missing junior, the situation would make sense. Just that, was Liu Yang not a human? How did he turn into Sovereign Chen Yong of the otherworldly demonic tribe? Not to mention, his disguise was actually one that they had been unable to see through. Zhao Huaiye and the others were also stunned by this revelation, and they could hardly believe what they were hearing. They immediately turned to look at Zhongxian, wanting to hear the words right from the mouth of their teacher. "That's right." Zhongxian nodded. "His indeed Liu Yang. It's due to some fortuitous encounters that he stumbled upon that he ended up in his current position. However, you must make sure to never reveal this matter, or else he will face great trouble and danger." Even though Liu Yang's inauguration ceremony would legitimize his position as the only sovereign of the otherworldly demonic tribe, his power was built upon the pretext that he was an otherworldly demon. If others learnt that he was actually a human, there was no doubt that he would be overthrown in a heartbeat. The situation that had just settled down would be thrown into chaos, and all of their effort would be unraveled. "His actually Liu Yang." Hearing the confirmation right from their teacher's mouth, Zhao Huaiye and the others had some mixed feelings on the inside. They had thought that their teacher was still recuperating, and they had wanted to do something to cleanse their teacher's name. Yet, who could have known that their teacher had already resolved the entire crisis before their arrival? With Liu Yang standing at the top of the otherworldly demonic tribe, the latter would no longer be a threat to the humans anymore. Zhongxian had his students enter his myriad ant hive nest and instructed them to cultivate in there before heading back to the capital. The inauguration ceremony was still ongoing when Zhongxian returned to the square. If there had still been some dissatisfaction regarding the new Sovereign Chen Yong usurping the shared jurisdiction of the three sovereigns, after what had happened earlier, there was no one who dared voice their opposition anymore. "This is our one and only sovereign, a figure whom none can replace. It seems like an era of prosperity is soon going to descend upon our spirit tribe." Anticipation could be seen in everyone's eyes. Sitting down on the regal throne, Liu Yang felt his heart beating wildly. Thinking back, if he had not met his teacher, he would have been an ordinary student in Tianxian Kingdom's Hongtian Academy. Perhaps, he would not even have reached Fighter 3 Dan yet. Somehow, he found himself sitting at the very center of an entire race, becoming the person who governed over the greatest threat to humanity. Had it been a year earlier, he would never have dared to even dream of something like that. If there is no opposition. As his heart palpated in agitation, Liu Yang rose to his feet and gazed upon the crowd beneath regally. "Today, I shall proclaim myself the sovereign of the spirit tribe." "Wait a moment. You are telling me that there is a new sovereign to the otherworldly demonic tribe, and on the day of his inauguration, he announced a ceasefire to the conflict and ordered a peaceful coexistence for the next 1,000 years. He even requested to establish trade relations with the Master-Teacher Pavilion by creating new markets within the subterranean galleries. If an official trading market is created in the subterranean galleries, there's no doubt that many master teachers will dive right in. Aren't they afraid that we will make use of this opportunity to assault them and eradicate them once and for all? That isn't the most shocking news yet. According to what I heard, the new sovereign promotes the virtues of teaching, preaching the importance of respect and formalities. He encourages otherworldly demons to listen to the lectures of the master teachers, and he pushes for interracial matrimony. It feels like he's really after a peaceful coexistence. The surviving ancient sages of the Master-Teacher Pavilion did not go back to hibernation right after returning from the Temple of Confucius. Instead, browsing through the reports that they had received, they looked as if they had seen a ghost. When they heard that a new sovereign Chen Yong had risen to power and united the entire otherworldly demonic tribe, they had prepared themselves for a tough battle. However, contrary to their expectations, the new sovereign Chen Yong had actually proposed so many favorable terms for mankind. If those plans were put into action, the scales were likely to tip in mankind's favor. There was a brief moment of silence as the ancient sages racked their minds in an attempt to figure out what was going on, but at that moment, an elder suddenly spoke up. I think that this might have something to do with my senior, Yang Xian. The senior you speak of refers to Celestial Master Teacher Zhong Xian, right? One of the ancient sages asked. Previously, Yang Shi had informed the ancient sages that his senior was a Celestial Master Teacher, just like Kong Shi, an existence who had been recognized by the heavens. Indeed, that's him. According to the intelligence I have received so far, he has been in the otherworldly battlefield for 2 months now, Yang Shi said. You can't seriously think that he has resolved the threat of the otherworldly demonic tribe by convincing them to make peace with us within just 2 short months, right? Another ancient sage scoffed. This was a feat that they and their ancestors had worked toward for tens of thousands of years but failed to achieve. For a fellow who had not even reached ancient sage to do it within 2 months. Do you think that this is playing house? Sage Chen is right. Yang Shi, aren't you taking this matter too lightly? Several voices chirped in agreement. Whether I am taking this matter too lightly or not, we'll know with a swift analysis. Yang Shi did not lose his cool upon hearing that his viewpoint was being challenged. Instead, he calmly looked at the other ancient sages before remarking, I believe that all of you are aware of the name of the newly inaugurated sovereign Chen Yong, right? The sovereign's name? The ancient sages lowered their gazes to look at the information that they had received, and one of them replied with a nod, Yang Liu. That's right, his name is Yang Liu. As you might know, my senior has 8 direct disciples. One of his direct disciples, who went missing a while ago, goes by the name of Liu Yang. Liu Yang? The crowd glanced at one another. Yang Liu. Are you suspecting that the new sovereign Chen Yong, Yang Liu, is Liu Yang? Indeed. Not only are their names similar, the fact that the new sovereign Chen Yong is rumored to have an exceptionally powerful mentor is also a point that we should be thinking about. Yang Shi revealed his conjecture. There were 6 assassins who appeared during the inauguration ceremony, and the descriptions that I have received match Zhao Ya, Zheng Yang, and the others. According to an eyewitness report, they were exceptionally receptive to the words of the new sovereign Chen Yong's mentor, obeying his orders without any opposition. I can't think of anyone who holds so much sway over the 6 of them other than my senior. The crowd immediately fell silent. With so much evidence laid out clearly before them, they would really be diminishing their own intelligence if they continued denying the matter. For Zhong Shi to lead his student and single-handedly conquer the entire otherworldly demonic tribe. Unbelievable. Underscore 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 author's note. The 13th arc, the sovereign of the otherworldly demonic tribe, comes to an end. From the next arc onward, Zhong Xian shall begin to trace Kong Shi's footsteps and rise higher and higher, eventually becoming the world's teacher. Please look forward to it. Chapter 1853 The Mysteries of the Ancient Domains. Unaware that his true identity had already been guessed by Yang Shi and the others, Zhong Xian was currently soaring through the air with his direct disciples following behind him. It had already been a month since Liu Yang had been inaugurated as sovereign Chen Yong of the otherworldly demonic tribe. A new year had just arrived, so the entire capital was filled with joyful bustle. Over the past month, Zhongxian had been offering pointers to his direct disciples, and for a moment, he felt as if he had returned to the days in the Qianxian kingdom. There were no grudges, no responsibilities, and no obligations. There were only the simple interactions between a teacher and his students. Each and every day was passed swimming in an ocean of knowledge, indulging in the simple joys of grasping a new move or learning a new cultivation technique. After going through Zhongxian's systematic training program, the zhenqi of Zhao Ya and the others had been reinforced, becoming much denser than before. This had resulted in a significant surge in their fighting prowess. At the same time, Yuan Dao had successfully cleared his second ancient sage ordeal. As for Liu Yang, after he achieved a breakthrough to blood reincarnation realm consummation, he had successfully placed the otherworldly demonic tribe under his complete control, thus crushing even the last voices of opposition against him. On the other hand, Zhongxian's cultivation was still capped at sempiternal realm consummation. However, his aura felt much more composed than before, and his state of mind was more stable. It seemed like he could push for a breakthrough at any moment as long as he willed it. 2 months of reinforcement had given him a deeper insight into the powers wielded by ancient sages, and his fighting prowess had improved considerably. With the Dragonbone Divine Spear in hand, it was no exaggeration to say that he was unrivaled beneath the Dimension Shatterer realm. Even if he encountered that deity from before, he would not be so powerless as to be defeated in a single move. As swift as Zhongxian's improvements were, there was one person who was growing faster than him, Vicious. With his body becoming complete and the straw garment inducing the growth of his flesh and blood, he had successfully achieved a breakthrough to the Dimension Shatterer realm, which meant that he was already able to shatter the dimension barrier of the world. While I am able to shatter the dimension barrier to open up a pathway to a higher dimension, my body isn't sufficiently resilient to leave this world yet. At the very least, my cultivation has to reach Dimension Shatterer realm consummation first. Vicious explained. Hearing those words, Zhongxian nodded in realization. At that moment, Liu Yang suddenly flew over from afar and clasped his fist. Teacher, I have already looked through all of the books of the otherworldly demonic tribe, and I found that the deities that have appeared in the past can't truly be considered gods or deities. Rather, they are just beings from the azure. During that period of time, Zhongxian had not only devoted his time entirely to guiding his students' cultivation. He had also instructed Liu Yang to make use of his authority as sovereign Chen Yong to gather information regarding the legends of the deities in hopes that he might gather some clues regarding Luo Ruoxin. The Azure. Indeed. The Azure is a dimension entirely different from the master-teacher continent, and the deity that descended previously came from there as well. As its environment is filled with ample eon of ancient sage, its environment for cultivation is superior to even the best blessed lands in our world. Liu Yang explained. The otherworldly demonic tribe possessed the ability to communicate with the deities, so even though most of the legends going around were just hearsay, there were still some slivers of truth amid them. Knowing what his teacher was intending to do, Liu Yang hesitated for a brief moment before explaining. However, it seems like the passageway leading to the Azure has been completely sealed. Any deities who wish to descend to our world must pay a heavy price through a ritual, and it's nigh impossible for us to ascend up to the Azure. The passageway leading to the Azure has been completely sealed. Zhongxian asked anxiously. In truth, he had already guessed as much. It had been a long time since any deities had descended to their world, and ever since Kongsha, there had been no cultivators who had successfully ascended to the Azure. You also got me to investigate the matter concerning Kongsha, Liu Yang said. Based on what I have found, he disappeared shortly after he captured the Immortal's envoy. Based on the clues I have gathered so far, it's likely that he has gone to the Azure. Shortly after Kongsha's departure, the 100 schools of philosophers also left the master-teacher continent to stand guard at a certain location. I tried investigating deeper into the matter, but the clues come to a complete halt here. However, I feel that the 100 schools of philosophers know more details about Kongsha's disappearance. Zhongxian nodded slowly. In this world, There was definitely no one who knew more about Kongshu than the 100 schools of philosophers. Their lineage had stemmed from Kongshu, so they were bound to have records regarding the latter. Zhongxian turned to ancient sage Mo Ling and asked, "Do you know where the 100 schools of philosophers are located?" He was the one who had contacted the 100 schools of philosophers in order to assault sovereign Chen Yong. As such, even if the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters had no idea where the 100 schools of philosophers were, there was no way that he would not know. Ancient sage Mo Ling pondered for a moment before replying, "They should be in the Kungsu domain." The Kungsu domain? Zhongxian frowned in bewilderment. He had heard of plenty of secret domains and the like, but he had never heard of the Kungsu domain. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience. Please click for visiting. There are many ancient domains on the Master-Teacher continent. I believe that you should have heard of a couple of them yourself. While the influence of the Master-Teacher Pavilion doesn't extend to these ancient domains, they harness the most primordial energy, which nourishes those suffering from deficient bloodline. Ancient sage Mo Ling explained. Zhongxian nodded in response. The Tianxian kingdom was an ancient domain, too. It was in hopes of recovering the emperor's bloodline that the Yuan Dao had been sent to the Tianxian kingdom to fend for himself. The same went for Zhongxian. To be honest, I'm not too sure where the entrance of the Kungsu domain is. The 100 schools of philosophers have guarded that secret extremely tightly. However, what I am certain of is that it has close ties to these ancient domains. I would say that there's a good chance that the entrance to the Kungsu domain is located in one of these ancient domains. Ancient sage Mo Ling said. He did have channels that allowed him to reach out to the 100 schools of philosophers, but he had never been to the Kungsu domain itself. There was no way that the 100 schools of philosophers would risk exposing their whereabouts to him after all. It's located in one of the ancient domains? Zhongxian frowned. He pondered for a brief moment before coming to a decision. I intend to return to the Tianxian kingdom for a moment. Do any of you wish to come along with me? To be honest, he felt that there were still some mysteries concerning the Tianxian kingdom that he had not unraveled yet. Given how huge the Master-Teacher continent was, he had transcended into the Tianxian kingdom. Furthermore, he had even found 2 students possessing rare unique constitutions there. Of course, it might just have been a coincidence, but he had a feeling that there was more to it. As such, he intended to start his search from there. I have been away for more than a year now. I think it's about time for me to return and visit my father, Zhao Yue said with a smile. She had departed from her homeland together with her teacher, and over the past year, she had risen to become one of the top powerhouses of the Master-Teacher continent, as well as a powerful ancient sage expert. It was about time for her to return and pay a visit to her family. I wish to come along as well. Wang Ying nodded fervently. The others also echoed their agreement. They wanted to return to their roots to take a look at the place where they had grown up. Liu Yang, you are still needed here for the time being, so you can't come along with us. As for the rest, make preparations. We'll be setting off soon, Zhongxian instructed with a smile. Even though they had successfully unified the otherworldly demonic tribe, there were still many reforms that had to be supervised and implemented. If the highest leader, Sovereign Chen Yong, vanished at that crucial moment, there was a good chance that things could go haywire. As indignant as he was, Liu Yang sighed deeply before nodding reluctantly. I understand. Zhongxian turned to the colossal beast beside Liu Yang and said, Ancient Sage All Fire, I'll be counting on you to assist Liu Yang by his side. Leave it to me. Ancient Sage All Fire replied heartily. All right, let's go then. After settling the matters there, Zhongxian took out the Dragonbone Divine Spear and slit a dimension rift in front of him. He took the lead and entered the dimension rift, and the others swiftly followed behind him. Chapter 1854 The young lady who missed OU. As the end of the dimension rift was the spatial seal of the subterranean gallery. The group stepped across the seal, returning to the Master-Teacher continent. At this point, Zhongxian took out the Dragonbone Divine Spear once more to open another dimension rift. Roughly 10 minutes later, they were already in the sky above the Tianxian kingdom. The capital of the Tianxian kingdom felt exceptionally serene. The crowds walking through the streets would never have been able to imagine that the strongest life forms in this world were floating right above them. Descending from the sky, Zhongxian and the others walked into Tianxian Royal City before entering Hongtian Academy. It had been little more than a year since their departure, but the entire place seemed to have expanded quite a bit. In the past, it could only house 40,000 students at most, but with its current scale, even housing 400,000 students would not pose too much of a problem. Hurry up. Lu Xun Laroche is conducting a lecture today. At this rate, we won't be able to make it in time. I thought that he has just achieved a breakthrough to 2-star master teacher and still needs to reinforce his cultivation. No matter what he's thinking, it's a rare opportunity for us to listen in on the class of a 2-star master teacher. There's no doubt that his lecture will be extremely beneficial to our cultivation. Back in the day, I listened in on Zhongshi's class, and even though it was only a short half an hour, it left a lasting effect on me. Wait a moment, you've attended one of Zhongshi's classes before? Of course. Little Li, you have only joined the academy this year, so you might not have heard of him before. Zhongshi was the most popular teacher in our Hongtian Academy a year back, and his reputation exceeded even Lu Xun Laoche's back then. While Zhongxian, Zhao Ya, and the others were walking around the compounds of the academy, a group of students suddenly rushed past them. They had disguised themselves a little prior to entering the city, so it was no wonder that no one was able to recognize them. Plus, they had left Hongtian Academy a year ago, so no one would be expecting them to be there. Hearing a familiar name, Zhongxian remarked with a smile, "Oh? Lu Xun is already a 2-star master teacher? That's quite fast." Lu Xun had been the most respected teacher in Hongtian Academy back when he first transcended over to this world. Even Wang Ying and Zhao Ya had wanted to join his classes, just that they had ended up being intercepted by him. That being said, Lu Xun had only been an ordinary star teacher back then, a huge distance away from becoming a 1-star master teacher. Yet, in the blink of an eye, he was already a 2-star master teacher. Sometimes, it was truly surprising how quickly things changed. "Teacher, shall we head over to take a look?" Zhao Ya asked with a smile. Zhongxian nodded in response. Given that this was the first familiar name that they had heard since returning, it went without saying that they should pay him a visit. While the two of them had been in conflict back then, that had been resolved in the end. To the current him, those were just interesting memories that he would look back upon from time to time. Following the flow of crowd, it did not take long before Zhongxian and the others arrived in an auditorium. In there, they saw a young man standing on top of a tall stage with a dignified disposition. He was none other than Lu Xun. Over the past year, he had cultivated an aura unique to him. He was dressed in a master teacher robe with 2 shining stars pinned on his chest, indicating that he was a 2-star master teacher. Had it been in the past, there was no way that one would have been able to find a 2-star master teacher in the Tianxian kingdom. "You lot." Just as they were intending to go a bit closer to the stage, a young lady suddenly appeared before them, blocking their way. With an appearance that hinted that she was in her early teens, this young lady was dressed in a greenish robe. There was a hint of valiance between her eyebrows, bearing some resemblance to the past Zhao Ya. Perplexed by the appearance of the young lady, the group of them glanced at one another before Wang Ying stepped forward to speak with a smile. "We heard that Lu Xun Laroche is holding a lecture, so we came over to take a look. If you wish to listen to Lu Laoche's class, you'll have to either flash your student token or pay 2 gold coins. This isn't an entrance fee but a rightful compensation that a master teacher deserves for his service," the young lady said as she stretched out her hand to demand payment. Gold coins. Zhongxian and the others were stunned. As noble as master teachers were, they needed a means for survival as well. As such, it was customary for them to demand payment for their lectures. Given that Zhongxian and the others had already left Hongtian Academy, there was no way that they would still have their student tokens with them. It was not that they were unwilling to pay the fee, but it was just a little difficult for them to do so. Even the least valuable item in Zhongxian's storage ring was a pinnacle spirit stone. Anything beneath that was not even worthy of his notice, let alone the gold coins used in unranked kingdoms. "We don't have any student tokens nor gold coins with us. However, I do have a pill here. Will you be able to make an exception for us with this?" After searching his storage ring for a very long time, he finally took out the lowest grade pill in his storage ring and handed it over. A pill. The young lady widened her eyes in astonishment. Even the resources that her teacher would usually bestow upon her were simple medicinal balls. Pills were considered a top-notch cultivation resource. They had their unique names, and each of them was incredibly valuable. The group before her were unable to take out any gold coins, but they had pills in their possession. The young lady took the pill from Zhongxian's hand and examined it closely. Slowly, a frown formed on her forehead. To her eyes, the pill looked perfectly plain and ordinary. It formed a stark contrast to the pills harnessing billowing energy that she usually saw around. It seemed to her that the pill in her hands was just a handful of medicinal herbs clumped together. Who do you think you're fooling? Can this be considered a pill? Do you take me for some countryside bumpkin? The young lady harumphed wrathfully. She might have been young, but she had seen pills before. A while back, an apothecary had specially delivered a pill in order to get on her teacher's good side. She had happened to be around when the apothecary presented his pill. As soon as the lid to the jade container was opened, a surge of spiritual energy had immediately rushed out, leaving one feeling incredibly revitalized. On the other hand, the pill before her was not properly kept in a jade container. Not only so, there was not the slightest spiritual energy that could be felt from it. Are you honestly calling this a pill? You must be joking. If you think that you can use this poor imitation of a pill to cheat me of 14 gold coins, you are sorely mistaken. Seeing the furious look on the young lady's face, Wang Ying realized that the young lady was unable to discern the true value of the pill, so she quickly explained, "This really is a pill. Furthermore, it's one that can aid your cultivation, so its value definitely far surpasses gold coins." "I only want gold coins. I don't need this pill." The young lady harumphed indignantly as she tossed the pill back to Zhongxian. Zhongxian had no idea whether he should laugh or cry at this situation. With his current fortune, even a pill that he randomly picked out of his storage ring could be sold for an astronomical price in the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters. He was offering it to a young lady instead of the 14 gold coin entrance fee, but the other party actually thought that he was a swindler. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Hearing that her teacher was being called a swindler, Wang Ying took out another medicinal herb and passed it over. "Since you don't want the pill, what about this herb? It's also quite valuable, so I believe it should suffice to compensate the fee." It was a 500-year-old coldstar grass. Of course, as the head of the Spirit Awakener Guild, there was no way that she would have gold coins on her. "You want to pay for the entrance fee with this weed? Don't think that I'm a naive little girl just because I'm young. I'll have you know that my teacher is 2-star Master Teacher Lu Zun. No matter what you say or bring out today, unless you can fork out the 14 gold coins entrance fee, I'll have to ask you to leave." It was one thing for the other party to try to fool her with fake pills, but to think that the other party would try to fool her with some wild grass that she could not recognize too. Feeling insulted, the young lady's face turned livid. Wang Ying was rendered speechless. She had no idea how she could deal with this situation. With her current identity, everything that could be found in her storage ring was an extraordinary and exclusive item. For her to take out something that was worth 14 gold coins and recognizable to this young lady, this was really a bit difficult. "You aren't going to pay the fee? From the looks of it, it seems like you are really here just to cause trouble." Seeing the conflicted looks on the faces of the group, the young lady was convinced that they were all scammers. Unable to hold back her rage anymore, she turned around and exclaimed, "Senior, these people here are refusing to pay for Lu Laosh's lesson. Please send them out for me." Voila! The next moment, a young man wielding a spear walked out from a nearby room. Upon seeing the young man's silhouette, Zheng Yang's body stiffened as his eyes reddened a little. "Mo Xiao, is that you?" Chapter 1855. Mo Xiao wants a duel. The young man who had just appeared was none other than the close brother whom Zheng Yang had grown up with, Mo Xiao. Back then, the two of them had joined Hongtian Academy with gusto, swearing to one another that they would join Wang Chao Laosh's class and become his student. Mo Xiao had eventually succeeded, but due to his poor performance during the assessment, Zheng Yang had lost his place to Sun Shan and ended up becoming Zhongxian's student. Back then, none of them could have imagined that things would turn out like that. The one who had cleared the assessment was still stuck in the Tianxian kingdom, and his name only echoed within the walls of Hongtian Academy. On the other hand, the one who had failed the assessment had risen above the ranks and become the head of the Combat Master Hall. In terms of strength, there were probably no more than a handful of people who could put up a fight against him. Sometimes, the plans that fate had in store were truly baffling. You are. Hearing his name being called in a very familiar manner, Mo Xiao could not help but frown. As an ancient sage, if Zheng Yang did not want someone weaker than him to recognize him, there was no way the other party would be able to discern his original appearance. As a result, not even the brother whom he had grown up with was able to recognize him. I am Zheng Yang, Zheng Yang said as he dispelled his disguise, revealing his true appearance. Zheng Yang. Hearing that familiar name and seeing that familiar face, Mo Xiao's eyes suddenly reddened. The two of them had been together ever since they were very young, and they had practiced their spearmanship together. It had only been a year since they had parted from one another, but Mo Xiao had always thought that they would never meet again in their lifetime. He had not thought that they would meet one another again so soon. After his agitation died down, Mo Xiao asked, "Didn't you leave with Zhongshe? Why would you?" Based on what he had heard, Zhongxian had successfully cleared the master-teacher examination, thus becoming the pride of the Tianxian kingdom. As for what happened afterward, due to the Tianxian kingdom being too isolated from the rest of the world, Mo Xiao did not know too much. I happened to be free, so I came back to meet up with you and the others, Zheng Yang replied with a smile. He could tell that the other party was curious about what he had been through over the past year, but to be honest, he had no idea how he should begin explaining it. After all, there was no one in the Tianxian kingdom who knew anything about the Combat Master Hall or ancient sages. Would the other party understand the significance of these terms if he tried to explain it to him? This is great. Given how long you have been with Zhongshe, you should have already reached Fighter 8 Dan Zhongshe realm by now, right? It has been very long since we last sparred with one another. I'll have you know that I've learned a formidable spear art in the last year, and my cultivation has also reached Fighter 7 Dan Tongxian realm pinnacle. Let me see how much you have improved over the past year. With a flick of his wrist, Mo Xiao retrieved his spear from his back and pointed it toward Zheng Yang with fighting wool flaring from him. He had been unable to find a suitable sparring partner ever since Zheng Yang left, and his hand had been itching for a good opponent. Upon seeing Zheng Yang right before his eyes, how could he possibly allow the other party to get away without a fight? Zhongshe realm? Tongxian realm pinnacle? Spear art? Zheng Yang was not too sure how he should react to this situation. He looked at Mo Xiao for a moment before shaking his head. Why don't we sit down and catch up with one another instead? Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates, better experience please click for visiting. It had just been year, but those realms felt so far away from him that he could hardly remember them anymore. Why? Are you afraid that I'll accidentally injure you? There's no need to worry about that, I'm able to control my strength rather well. I'll hold myself back if I see that you are at your limits. There won't be any problems, so there's no need to worry. Mo Xiao laughed heartily. This. Zheng Yang scratched his head in embarrassment. For an ancient sage like him to actually spar with a Fighter 7 Dan Tongxian realm cultivator. Wasn't this pretty much bullying? Noticing Zheng Yang's hesitation, Mo Xiao frowned. Are you looking down on me right now, or are you afraid that you will be humiliated upon suffering a defeat? That's not it. Since Mo Xiao had already put it in such a way, there was no way that Zheng Yang could continue turning him down. Thus, he shook his head helplessly before taking out the weakest spear that he had in his possession. Where should we have the battle? Oh, you even have a storage ring. Not bad, it seems like Zhongshe treats you quite well. Seeing the spear materialize in Zheng Yang's arm, Mo Xiao's eyes glowed in envy. He pointed to the side and said, "My teacher is going to hold a class here, so let's go over to a dueling ring." He doesn't have a storage ring either. Seeing the massive gap standing between the two of them, Zheng Yang shook his head bitterly. Feeling a bad premonition, he sighed deeply before replying, "Let's go then." They began making their way over to the dueling ring not too far away. Let's head over to take a look too. Since the lecture over here had yet to begin, Zhongxian and the others decided to follow along. At the same time, seeing that those swindlers were actually acquainted with her senior, the young lady hesitated for a brief moment before deciding to tag along. Both Zheng Yang and Mo Xiao leaped onto the nearest dueling ring, and they immediately caught the attention of the crowd. Seeing that so many people had gathered around, Zheng Yang quickly concealed his appearance and aura so that the other spectators would not discern his true identity. Mo Xiao is the famed spearmanship genius in the academy. With his cultivation, even the teachers and elders aren't a match for him. Where in the world did that fellow pop out from to dare compete with him? I have no idea. I'm just here to watch the other party get pummeled. Haha. Same here. Over the past year, Mo Xiao had made rapid progress under Lu Xun's tutelage. Be it in terms of his cultivation or his comprehension of spearmanship, he was already approaching a level comparable to Zhongshe. There would not be too many people in the entire Hongtian Academy who were a match for him, let alone a youngster who had just appeared from nowhere. On the other hand, Lu Xun had also noticed the commotion, and it did not take him long to figure out what was going on from the discussion among the crowd. Sighing deeply, he looked at the crowd, who were looking at the duel excitedly, and said, "Since they are going to have a duel, I shall use their duel as the topic of my lecture today. I'll talk about the feasibility of certain spearmanship maneuvers in real-time battle." Whoa! That will really be an interesting lecture. Wah! I love hearing Lu Laroche talking about practical battle concept. There is no lecture that will enhance one's fighting prowess more than this. I really haven't come in vain today. Hearing that Lu Xun was going to lecture about the usage of spearmanship in battle, a huge commotion rippled through the crowd, and the excitement in the room was palpable. Everyone swiftly turned their gazes to the dueling ring. Haha, come. Seeing that everyone's attention was on him, including his teachers, Mo Xiao felt more pumped than ever. With a powerful push, his spear whooshed toward Zheng Yang. Woo! The speed of his spear was so fast that one could literally hear a sonic boom in the air. The attack that Mo Xiao has just made isn't too bad. His movements are decisive, and it follows through smoothly without any unnecessary hesitation, reminiscent of the flowing current of a river. The crux in spearmanship lies in the fluidity of one's movements. Once one has made a decision, one's movements must be lightning fast in order to create a powerful momentum to overwhelm one's enemy. Ordinary Zongshis would find it hard to stand against the attack that Mo Xiao just launched, Lu Xun explained calmly as he nodded in satisfaction. Meanwhile, as one of the participants of the duel, Zheng Yang was extremely conflicted. The movement of the spear before him was simply too slow, no different from the movements of a snail. Furthermore, its might was so weak that if he deflected it carelessly, he might end up hurting his friend. This really put him in a spot. Deflecting it was not an option, but not deflecting it was not a good idea either. What a dilemma! Just as I said, the momentum created by Mo Xiao has overwhelmed his enemy, leaving his enemy in utter panic. Seeing that Zheng Yang was not moving in the least, Lu Xun nodded. The spearmanship that I have imparted to Mo Xiao is centered around the idea of momentum. Its true might lies in controlling the flow of battle through imposing momentum. In order to train Mo Xiao, I took him to a waterfall and had him withstand the force of the currents for 3 whole months before he reached his current level. There's no doubt that his opponent is going to lose. Before he could finish his words, his lips suddenly began quivering uncontrollably. Mo Xiao's spear struck Zheng Yang's eye squarely, and then it completely dissipated. The spear, that was. Discord chat group, https://discord. GG80HVEX. Chapter 1856 The Value of the Pill. Zheng Yang felt so embarrassed that he could wither on the spot. It was in a moment of tough internal conflict that the other party's spear suddenly struck his eye, but that was not the worst. He had accidentally released a small sliver of a fraction of a hint of his zhenqi due to the aggression, and the other party's spear had simply dissipated. Mortal-tier weapons were simply too flimsy. If it had been a great sage artifact instead, it would have at least taken a flutter of his eyelid to do the same. He really should have controlled his strength better in the duel, but then again, he did not even exert any strength at all. Deng 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 deng. With the spear dissipating, Mo Xiao leaped back in sheer horror. He had aimed for Zheng Yang's eye, thinking that the latter would surely attempt to dodge, but who could have known that the latter would remain completely still, as if a statue? He had really panicked for a moment, but to his astonishment, instead of a tragedy unfolding before his eyes, his spear had become the victim of the battle instead. It was in that moment that he realized that Zheng Yang was far more powerful than he had thought. Thus, he hurriedly retreated several steps before abruptly twisting his body around to send a kick right over. The transmission leading up to the kick was extremely smooth, and it was apparent just by looking at it that Mo Xiao had refined this move over and over again in order to achieve perfection. With chilling intent, his leg whipped right toward Zheng Yang's neck. Catcher. As if kicking a metal pillar, Mo Xiao's shin splintered from the center. Ah! With a cry of agony, Mo Xiao collapsed to the ground. His eyes reflected his disbelief as he exclaimed, "Could it be that you have surpassed Zongsha realm to reach Jizuan realm?" "I." Zheng Yang's face twitched. He had not even made a move, but the other party's spear and leg were already ruined. How were they supposed to have a proper duel like that? "I never thought that you would have reached such a level." Facing Zheng Yang's silence, Mo Xiao thought that he had guessed correctly, and envy rippled in the depths of his eyes. When he first heard that his good friend had come under Zhongsha's tutelage, he had felt sympathy for the latter for a very long time. Not too long later, a conflict had happened between Zhongsha and Lu Zunlaosha, and his teacher, Wang Chao Laosha, had made him come under Lu Zunlaosha's tutelage instead. He had battled with Zheng Yang then, and it was there that he had realized that the latter's spearmanship had already far exceeded his. Ever since then, he had worked himself tirelessly, hoping to challenge Zheng Yang once more to a duel and best him. This was also why he had challenged Zheng Yang to a duel so passionately as soon as they reunited with one another. He had thought that his hard work over the year would allow him to defeat the latter with ease, but who could have known that the other party had already reached Jizuan realm, thus pulling his distance away from him? His attack could not even hurt the other party. Zheng Yang intended to explain the matter, but eventually, he simply shook his head. In Mo Xiao's eyes, Jizuan realm probably meant the very peak of the world. It was only normal for him to think that way. At this moment, a voice echoed across the room. It was from Zhong Xian. "He's already someone from a different world from you." Hearing those words, Zheng Yang lowered his gaze melancholically. He had been excited a moment ago to see his good friend, but by that point, his joy had already vanished. It was just a year of absence, but the gap between them had grown so huge that a rift of unthinkable size stood between the two of them. It swiftly dawned on him that the old days were already gone, and there was no way that the relationship between him and Mo Xiao would be the same anymore. Due to the difference in positions and strength, they no longer had a shared language with one another. No matter how hard they tried to ignore it, the rift would only become more and more visible to them until it was shoved right into their faces. Such was the current situation between them. Mo Xiao was still wondering whether he had achieved a breakthrough from Zongsha to Jizuan realm, whereas the truth was that he had already reached a level that Mo Xiao could not even fathom. "Along with your growth, you will inevitably part with many friends," Zhong Xian continued. The worlds that Zheng Yang and Mo Xiao lived in had already diverged from one another, and it was unlikely that they would ever intersect again. It was not that any of them wanted to sever their friendship, but the sheer difference in their strength changed the nature of their relationship. Rivalry had always been a key aspect of their relationship, and there was no way that Mo Xiao could accept an unbridgeable distance between the two of them. Such a relationship would only crush his confidence and esteem. Hearing his teacher's words, Zheng Yang shook out of his state and replied with a smile, "Yes, you're right. I have reached Jizuan realm." He pulled his good friend from the ground before walking over to Zhong Xian. "Teacher, may I have the pill that you took out earlier? Mo Xiao is injured, so I would like to give it to him." "Here." With a flick of his finger, the pill that Zhong Xian had given the young lady earlier flew into Zheng Yang's hand. "Eat this," Zheng Yang said as he passed the pill over to Mo Xiao. "UN." Mo Xiao nodded. He was just about to swallow the pill when the young lady from before suddenly walked over with an anxious look on her face. "Senior, I took a look at the pill earlier, and there isn't the slightest hint of spiritual energy in it. It's very likely a fake pill. You mustn't eat it. She had taken a look at it, and the pill appeared extremely suspicious to her. What if Mo Xiao ate it and his cultivation went berserk? Don't worry, I believe in Zheng Yang. He wouldn't harm me. Mo Xiao replied with a smile before swallowing the pill heartily. While the vast difference in their strength did leave him feeling a little disheartened, the trust and feelings that he had for Zheng Yang had not changed at all. He knew for certain that Zheng Yang would not harm him, and he trusted him so. Little Meng is right. Mo Xiao, how can you swallow a pill from another person so recklessly? Lu Zun also did not expect his student to swallow the pill given by another person so readily. With a frown on his forehead, he rushed forward and placed his palm on Mo Xiao's body, saying, I'll check on your physical condition to see if there's anything wrong with that pill. Boom. Barely after his junqi surged into Mo Xiao's acupoints, a gush of heat suddenly rushed out from the latter's body, knocking him back. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Peng. Lu Zun was sent flying before knocking heavily onto the stage, leaving a massive pit in it. What terrifying strength! Lu Zun remarked with narrowed eyes as he struggled to his feet. He anxiously looked at his student, only to see tremendous energy pulsating around the latter's acupoints. It looked almost as if the young man would burst into flames. An incredible surge of spiritual energy gathered around the young man, forming a massive spiral above him. Catcher. In less than 3 breaths, he had already overcome his bottleneck, and his Tongxian realm pinnacle cultivation advanced into Zongsha realm. However, it did not stop there. Zongsha realm primary stage. Zongsha realm intermediate stage. Zongsha realm advanced stage. Zongsha realm pinnacle. Jizuan realm primary stage. Jizuan realm intermediate stage. Even upon reaching Jizuan realm pinnacle, the momentum of his breakthroughs did not halt at all. He continued achieving a breakthrough right to transcendent mortal. Eventually, his cultivation stabilized at transcendent mortal 2 dan origin energy realm. Every movement of his was suffused with incredible power, making it feel as if he had just ascended to immortality. This. Lu Zun's eyes widened as his body trembled uncontrollably. Looking almost as if he had seen a ghost, he uttered in disbelief, that pill, is it a grade 6 pill? Only a pill of grade 6 and above could possibly contain such pure medicinal energy that it would allow a person to achieve a breakthrough of several realms at once without coming to harm. Grade 6. The young lady from before suddenly felt her vision going dark. She suddenly recalled how she had rejected the pill earlier when they offered to pay her with it instead of gold coins, and she had even accused the other party of trying to swindle her. Had she accepted and swallowed it right away, the person to have made a breakthrough would have been her instead. Of course not. Hearing Lu Zun's words, Zheng Yang shook his head. How could my teacher possibly have grade 6 pills? It isn't a grade 6 pill. If that isn't the case, how could it allow Mo Xiao to achieve a breakthrough without suffering any side effects? His cultivation still feels incredibly compact. There isn't any feeling of looseness or instability. Lu Zun argued with widened eyes. All medicine contained some degree of poison. The higher grade a pill was, the greater medicinal energy it would harness, thus boosting a person's cultivation by a greater degree. However, this came at a price. One's cultivation would be unstable after the breakthroughs, and it was highly likely that it would harm one's body in one way or another. Was it really possible for a pill lower than grade 6 to achieve such mystical effects? Grade 6 pills don't have the ability to simultaneously heal a person's injuries and boost their cultivation significantly. The pill my teacher took out is a grade 8 pill, which is why Mo Xiao was able to achieve a breakthrough in his cultivation, Zheng Yang explained with a smile. Grade 8. The commotion in the auditorium abruptly hushed as everyone found themselves stupefied by what they had just heard. Chapter 1857 Zheng Yang's girlfriend 1. It went without saying that a grade 8 pill could only be forged by an 8-star apothecary or above. Every single one of those pills was unbelievably invaluable. Even the king of the Qianqian kingdom would willingly abandon his position if he could acquire a grade 8 pill in return. To actually give such a valuable pill to Mo Xiao without any hesitation. Feeling the energy coursing through his body and his right leg healing up without a hitch, Mo Xiao felt as if he was dreaming. He hurriedly shook his head and exclaimed, "Zhen Yang, this is simply too expensive. I can't accept this gift from you." He had thought that it would just be an ordinary recovery pill. How in the world was he to know that it would actually be a legendary grade 8 pill? Had he known that it was worth so much, he would never have swallowed it. There's no need to stand on ceremony, it's just a pill. Given our relationship, it's nothing at all. Zheng Yang patted his good friend's shoulder as he spoke with a smile. Even though their worlds had diverged from one another, their feelings still remained. The nature of their relationship might change, but he would always remember Mo Xiao to be the person who had practiced spearmanship along with him in his younger days. Realizing that the young man standing before him was actually a fearsome figure, Lu Xun hurriedly walked over with a hint of deference in his eyes. "Mo Xiao, your friend is a person who could afford to take out a grade 8 pill and gift it to another so easily. Without a doubt, the other party was not someone whom a 2-star master teacher like him could compare to. Teacher, he is." Perplexed to hear that his teacher was unable to recognize his good friend, Mo Xiao frowned in doubt. He was just about to introduce Zheng Yang when he heard a voice in his ears. "I think it will be best if you don't introduce me. Back then, things didn't end too happily between me and Lu Xun Laroche." Mo Xiao immediately trailed to a halt. Indeed. Due to Lu Xun humiliating Zhongshe back then, his good friend, together with Zhao Yue and the others, had challenged Lu Xun to a duel and pummeled him in public, causing their relationship to be rather tense. "He's a friend whom I met by coincidence. I just didn't think that he would have such a valuable pill in his possession," Mo Xiao replied. "I see." Lu Xun could detect that Mo Xiao was not being completely honest, but he chose not to probe any further. He took a glance at Zhongxian and the others before nodding contemplatively. "While the pill has raised your cultivation, you still have to reinforce it carefully before you are able to utilize it properly. Since that's the case, I won't bother you any longer. Let's meet again in the future." Having caused such a huge commotion, Zheng Yang felt that it would be awkward if he remained there. Thus, he bade his farewell to Mo Xiao before leaving with Zhongxian and the others. At this point, there was no one amid the crowd who did not know that they were extraordinary, especially the young lady who had demanded the entrance fee from them earlier. She quickly rushed up to them, hoping to grasp the opportunity that she had missed earlier once more. However, barely after she took a few steps, her vision suddenly blurred. Before she knew it, their silhouettes had vanished, as if they had never appeared in the first place. It was as if everything had been a dream. Even when she tried to recall the event earlier, she found that she was unable to recall their faces, let alone their unique traits. Wah! The young lady collapsed to the ground and began bawling. How could she have allowed such an opportunity to slip right through her fingers? At that moment, all she wanted to do was bawl her eyes out. On the other hand, Lu Xun sent a telepathic message to Mo Xiao, remarking, "They are Zhongshe and his direct disciples." It was hard to tell whether he was asking a question or simply making a statement. "Teacher." Mo Xiao's face reddened upon hearing those words. It was clear to see that his good brother had been unwilling to reveal his identity publicly, but at the same time, he did not wish to lie to his teacher. "I don't intend to put you in a tough position. The reason I was able to tell is because I can't think of anyone else who would come here and give you a grade 8 pill," Lu Xun said with a bitter smile. "Treasure your friend well. It's the greatest fortune of your life to know him." Having cleared the 2-star master-teacher examination, he was privy to some of the secrets of the world. Through his connections, he had learned that his rival from a year ago, after leaving Tianqian Kingdom, had lived a brilliant life that shone like the stars in the sky. From time to time, he would hear of the other party performing some sort of spectacular feat that would leave the eyeballs of others popping out. Many said that he was a genius as well, but compared to the other party, well, there was probably no merit in making this comparison at all. The more he thought about it, the more he felt like a tadpole in a marsh standing in the face of a divine dragon of the 9 heavens. Seeing that his teacher knew the truth, Mo Xiao knew that there was no point hiding it at all. Unable to suppress his curiosity, he asked, "Teacher, you knew? If so, May I know if Zheng Yang is at Jizuan realm, or even higher than that? His first thought upon witnessing the other party's strength was that the other party had achieved a breakthrough to Jizuan realm. However, after he swallowed the pill and his cultivation rose to transcendent mortal Tudan origin energy realm, he found that he was still unable to accurately perceive Zheng Yang's strength. It was only then that he realized that his good friend had already reached a level that even his teacher could only look up to. His current realm is not something that we are qualified to know. You only need to know that if your brother had fought seriously earlier, there's a good chance that the entire Tianxian kingdom might have disappeared completely from the map, Lu Xun replied helplessly. The entire Tianxian kingdom, disappearing from the map. Mo Xiao's lower jaw fell slack in astonishment. After leaving the auditorium, Zhong Xian and his students headed to the classroom where they had studied in the past. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates, better experience please click for visiting. There were no changes to the classroom, it looked as small and narrow as it had done before. After looking around the classroom for a while, Zhong Xian waved his hand and said, "You should go and reunite with your kin, Yuan." Nodding, Wang Ying, Zhao Ya, and the others took their leave. Wang Ying came from one of the 4 great clans of Tianxian royal city, so her elder brother and father resided in the city. Zhao Ya's father was one of the highest officials of the Tianxian kingdom and was currently serving as the lord of Baiyu City. Naturally, she had to meet her father since she had finally returned. As for Wei Ruyan and Lu Chong, as they had already lost all of their kin, they did not have anyone particular whom they really wanted to meet. Shortly after Zhao Ya and the others left, Zheng Yang hesitated for a brief moment before asking, "Junior Ruyan, may I trouble you to come along with me?" "What is it?" Wei Ruyan replied with a frown. Perhaps it was due to the influence of her background or the innate poison body, but she had a cold demeanor. Other than Zhong Xian, she would rarely bother with others, even if the other party was her senior or junior. While she was relatively closer to Zheng Yang, the truth was that they rarely spoke to one another. "I need your help with something. It's about one of the regrets that I have been harboring thus far." Zheng Yang spoke hesitantly. "Oh, very well then. What is it?" Wei Ruyan replied. Her teacher had always told her that she should look after her juniors and seniors. Since Zheng Yang needed her help with something, as long as it was not too much trouble, she did not mind helping him. "I would like to bring you to meet someone." "You want me to meet someone?" Wei Ruyan asked in bewilderment. It was not as if Zheng Yang did not know that she did not take too well to anyone except for their teacher, so why did he still make such a request of her? Seeing Wei Ruyan's expression, Zheng Yang hurriedly explained in embarrassment, "You don't have to say anything later on. You just have to stand on the spot, and it'll suffice." "Just who in the world is it?" "If the other party is strong, you can report it to our teacher and get his help," Wei Ruyan said. No, that isn't it. Not only is she not strong, she's extremely weak." At this point, Zheng Yang gritted his teeth tightly, as if making up his mind, before explaining, "To tell you the truth. Before I came under our teacher's tutelage, there was a girl whom I loved. I gave her my heart, only to be faced with cold mockery and rejection. Since I have returned here, I wanted to meet her once more. It's not that I still have feelings for her, but I want to put a full stop to this regret of mine." "In other words, you want me to act as your girlfriend?" Wei Ruyan scoffed. Her senior was already the head of the Combat Master Hall, an ancient sage expert. Who could have thought that he would be such an amateur when it came to affairs relating to the heart? So, because he had been rejected by the other party in the past, he wanted to find an even more beautiful person to act as his girlfriend so as to make the other party regret rejecting him? What a childish act it was. Had she been in his shoes, there was no way that she would have resorted to something as meaningless as that. If the other party dared reject her, she would have just poisoned the other party to death. It would be an utter waste of breath to thrash things out and speak so much nonsense. Chapter 1858 Zheng Yang's Girlfriend 2. Zheng Yang scratched his head in embarrassment at having his intentions pointed out so directly by Wei Ruyan. Fine. I'll agree to your request." Seeing the look on Zheng Yang's face, Wei Ruyan sighed deeply before relenting. With a glint in her eyes, she asked, So, what do you need me to do? Shall I poison her? If you want, I can guarantee her a slow and painful death, and you can be assured that there will be no evidence pointing to you. If you are worried about her family getting vengeance on you, I can help you get rid of them as well. Ah, it's all right. I think I can handle it by myself, Zheng Yang replied with a shudder. He was getting the feeling that he might have erred in his judgment when he requested his junior's help. There's no need to stand on ceremony. If you don't want her dead, I can concoct some pills that will eat into her mind and turn her into a puppet. She will become your toy to play with, and you won't need to worry about her turning against you at all. Wei Ruyan continued throwing out ideas with a nonchalant look on her face. Cough cough. Zheng Yang quickly interrupted Wei Ruyan's train of thought. Junior, I just remembered that I still have other stuff to attend to. You seem to be rather busy as well, so I guess I won't trouble you for such trivialities. Farewell. And so, he immediately turned tail and fled. As expected of the master of Poison Hall, Wei Ruyan was truly not someone to be trifled with. However, before Zheng Yang could get far, he heard the sound of wind behind him. Turning around, he saw a frail figure following behind him, and he was nearly scared out of his wits. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Junior Ruyan. Zheng Yang said with a hint of bitterness in his voice. I get it, you don't need to waste your breath explaining. I was only making some casual remarks. It's not as if I am fond of meaningless slaughter. Even if I want to make a move, I'll only make a move on those who are an ancient sage and above. Ordinary humans don't really pique my interest anymore. Wei Ruyan harumphed. While she was the master of the Poison Hall, she was not the kind of person who would take away a life for trivial reasons. Her words might not reflect it, but having lost her loved ones before, she was well aware of the value of life. Besides, if she dared make light of life, her teacher would probably be the first one to whip her to death. But Zheng Yang protested weakly. He knew that his junior had just been pulling his leg, but he really did not dare order a person as skilled with poison as Wei Ruyan around. If she lost her cool and released her poison, he would really be at a loss. No buts. Lead the way forward. If you dare say another meaningless word, I'll poison you mute. Wei Ruyan flung her hands coolly. Zheng Yang nearly burst into tears. What the heck was that? If he had known that would happen earlier, there was no way that he would have turned to her for help. Things really seemed to be getting out of his control. It was as if he had gotten on board a pirate's ship and could not alight anymore. The two of them swiftly flitted out of Hongtian Academy, and not too long later, they stopped right before a majestic manor. This manor was truly humongous in size, spanning the width of an entire street. Looking down at the manor from the sky, Zheng Yang was confused. Wait a moment, this doesn't seem right. What's wrong? Wei Ruyan walked up to his side. I used to live in this area, and I'm sure that it's a civilian area. Why would there be such a huge manor here? Zheng Yang remarked in astonishment. His family was not too well-to-do. Otherwise, if he had gone through systematic training, he would not have had difficulties clearing Wang Chao Laosh's assessment. Before he left, the place had still been an ordinary civilian housing area. When did such a massive manor appear there? Isn't that question a really simple one to answer? You just have to grab a person off the streets and ask him. Wei Ruyan descended to the ground and walked up to a tea stand. Looking at the owner of the tea stand, she asked, Friend, may I ask if this manor has recently been constructed? The owner of the tea stand initially could not be bothered to answer the question, but when he saw the looks of the young lady, a smile blossomed on his face as he quickly answered, Young lady, it must be your first time in Tianqian Royal City. You're right, this manor was recently constructed. The construction began a year ago, and it was completed in less than a month. It's said that all of the top craftsmen in the area worked tirelessly within this period of time in order to complete this project on time. Take a look at the layout of the courtyard. Rumor has it that the owner of the manor hired landscapers, making it a building even grander than the royal palace itself. Even landscapers were brought in. Wei Ruyan and Zheng Yang exchanged gazes. Most civilians in Tianqian Royal City might have been unaware of the significance of landscapers, but the two of them were fully aware. Even large clans like the Zhong clan would have to tap into some connections in order to contact a landscaper. If the owner of the manor had the resources to build this manor and connections to hire a landscaper, why would they still choose to live in Tianqian Royal City? Do you know whose manor this is? Zheng Yang asked out of curiosity. It's the Su clan's manor, the owner of the tea stand replied. Su clan? Zheng Yang was perplexed. Since when has there been a Su clan in Tianqian Royal City? The four great clans of the Tianqian Royal City had always been the Wang, Liu, Bai, and Du. There had never been any notable Su clans in the vicinity before. You have never heard of the Su clan? Do you know of its clan head, Su Maroqing? The owner of the tea stand asked with a frown. Su Maroqing? Zheng Yang's body jolted as he looked as if he had heard something unbelievable. Is his daughter Su Feifei? That's right. The owner of the tea stand nodded in response. If not for his daughter finding a good son-in-law, there's no way that he, Su Maroqing, would have been able to live in such a luxurious manner. If it was 2 years ago, he wouldn't have been able to afford the tea from my stand. Even the clothes that he wore were shabby and ugly. However, after finding himself that son-in-law, the one thing that he doesn't lack now is money. I heard that he spent a total of 10 gold coins just for his dinner yesterday. Wait a moment. Son-in-law? Zheng Yang cut into the owner's words. Unknowingly, his hands had already clenched into fists. It looks like you really don't know much, do you? However, you are right to ask me about the matter. I have been working here for more than 10 years now, and there's nothing in this area that escapes my notice. The owner of the tea stand was becoming more and more passionate in his words, such that it was starting to feel as if he would never stop. His daughter, Su Feifei, somehow got to know a noble of some empire. The noble is rich and powerful, and he built this massive manor just for the two of them. Otherwise, given the capabilities of that father and daughter, do you think that they would ever have been able to afford something of this scale? I see. Zheng Yang replied as he nodded in a daze. So, this Su Feifei is the young lady whom you fancied in the past. It seems like she doesn't a good eye for people. Wei Ruyan chuckled softly as she sent a telepathic message to Zheng Yang. Be it the noble of whichever empire or what, even emperors would pale in comparison to the current Zheng Yang. To think that Su Feifei had actually forsaken the pearl before her eyes to settle with a mere noble. It sure would be interesting to break open her mind and find out what she was thinking once she found out what she had missed out on. Zheng Yang was momentarily unable to find the words to speak. Back then, he had been rejected by Su Feifei right before the assessment, resulting in his forceful spearmanship being riddled with hesitance. As a result, he had failed to come under Wang Chao's tutelage. Look, they are coming out. Jia. The massive gates of the manor creaked open, and a young lady holding onto the arm of a middle-aged man walked out from within. The young lady was decent-looking, but in terms of appearance, she would hardly be a match for even Shun Bai Yu, let alone Wei Ruyan, Zhao Ya, and the others. The middle-aged man beside her had a plump body and slightly distorted facial features. His size was even more exaggerated than Yuan Dao's. Despite so, the young lady's chin remained proudly tilted upward, as if she was holding onto the hand of a charming prince. Seeing this sight, Wei Ruyan scoffed, the person you liked actually married such an ugly old man? It was likely that Su Feifei had married the other party for his money, but how in the world could Su Feifei bear sleeping beside someone like that every night if it was not true love? Breathing out deeply, Zheng Yang turned around and said, "Let's go." This was the first person whom he had liked, and his crush on her had lasted more than 5 years. All he wanted was to pay her one last visit so as to put down his feelings for her once and for all. Since he had met her, and it seemed like she was living blissfully, that was already enough for him. Go! The show hasn't even started yet, so how can we go at such an exciting moment? Wei Ruyan chuckled softly as her lips crept into a smile. Chapter 1859. A bird in the jungle. No matter what, Zheng Yang was her senior. He had offered his heart to Su Feifei back then, only to be cruelly rejected. If Su Feifei had lived her life properly since then, she would have had nothing to say. However, she had actually found an oversized old man to live with. Of course, it was Su Feifei's right to choose how she wanted to live, but Wei Ruyan simply could not help but feel pissed at this turn of events. And given that she was pissed, how could she possibly allow them to continue living happily? Not expecting Wei Ruyan to refuse to leave, Zheng Yang suddenly had a bad premonition. Junior, don't mess around. They are just ordinary people. Don't worry, I don't plan on going too far. Ignoring Zheng Yang's protests, Wei Ruyan took a seat at the tea stand and smiled sweetly at the owner. Boss, a pot of tea here. After the pot of tea arrived, she sipped leisurely on the tea as if she was just idling her afternoon around in the area. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates, better experience please click for visiting. Knowing that it would be impossible for him to forcefully extricate Wei Ruyan from the area, Zheng Yang clutched his forehead before sitting right in front of her with a helpless look on his face. Su Feifei looked at the middle-aged man beside her and asked, Xiongji, are we really heading to the royal palace? I instructed that Shen Zui fellow to bring me some death soldiers, but he hasn't gotten it done yet. He probably doesn't want his emperor's seat anymore. The middle-aged man addressed as Xiongji harumphed coldly as a vicious glint flashed across his eyes. To dare disobey Xiongji, that Shen Zui sure is brazen. If we don't teach him a lesson, he might think that he's really something. Su Feifei covered her mouth with her hand as she scoffed coyly, fully revealing her disdain for the emperor of the Tianxian kingdom. In the eyes of others, Shen Zui was the respected emperor of the Tianxian kingdom, but to her, he meant nothing at all. That's right. He's just the emperor of a measly unranked kingdom, but he sure thinks highly of himself. If not for my benevolence, he would have already died many times over. Xiongji sneered coldly. In the midst of his words, his face suddenly twitched, and strength suddenly drained from his legs. Putong. He fell over and kneeled onto the ground. Taken aback, Su Feifei exclaimed in horror, Xiongji. She knew full well how powerful the middle-aged man beside her was. In terms of strength, even Shen Zui was no match for him at all. He was an existence that far surpassed Jizuan realm. Yet, for him to fall down just like that, something had to be up. Who assaulted me? Not expecting to be humiliated in public, Xiongji glared at the surroundings ferociously as he spat with clenched jaws. You have been afflicted with my divine ghost heart beguiling poison. A calm voice sounded in the air. If you wish to live, you need someone to willingly transfuse their fresh blood to you. Otherwise, within an incense's time, you will die from excessive blood loss from your 7 apertures, and not even the deities will be able to save you. Tracing the voice, Xiongji hurriedly lifted her head, only to see a young lady seated gracefully before a tea stand with a cup of piping hot tea in her hands. Who are you? We have no grudge against one another, so why do you want to kill me? Judging from how the young lady was able to poison him from afar and render him powerless, as well as the fact that he found himself unable to gauge the depths of the young lady's strength at all, Xiongji realized that he was not a match for the young lady. Thus, he did not dare move recklessly. How could there be so many grudges in the world to deal with? I simply found the sight of you irksome. Wei Ruyan leisurely tucked her hair behind her ears as she placed the teacup back onto the table. With absolute nonchalance, she remarked, you don't have much time left. I don't think you have the luxury to be dawdling around here if you want to live. Xiongji swiftly drove the zhenqi in his body in hopes of neutralizing the poison in his body, but he found that he was unable to flush it out. It was likely just as the young lady had said, he needed someone to transfuse their blood into him in order to be cured. With a livid expression, he turned to Su Feifei beside him and shouted, Feifei, come over here. Knowing what Xiongji was thinking of, Su Feifei's face paled in horror as she retreated fearfully. Even true love would falter in the face of life and death, let alone a relationship built on mutual benefits. Watching as Su Feifei backed away, Xiongji narrowed his eyes threateningly. Are you thinking of disobeying my orders? Su Feifei trembled in fear. You are just a countryside bumpkin. It can't be that you actually think of yourself as a noble person. You should have known the price behind the luxury you were given. Hurry up and transfuse your blood to me. If I recover from this poison, I'll dote on you like before. Otherwise, I'll have your life right here, right now. Xiongji roared as killing intent flared from his eyes. What Su Feifei and Su Maroqing? They were all just convenient tools at his disposal. Don't. Knowing that she would likely lose her life if the transfusion took place, Su Feifei backed away fearfully. However, barely after taking a few steps back, she suddenly felt a powerful energy sweeping over her. In that instant, she realized that if she continued backing away, there was no doubt that Xiongji would have her life. The light in her eyes immediately vanished, replaced with sorrowful darkness. There was a person who had loved her wholeheartedly a year ago. He had confessed to her, but she had scorned him for his shabby background and rejected him. Who knew that the young man would actually find himself a good teacher and rise to the top? Even Shen Zui had to honor him as an esteemed guest. She had thought that she had lost the only opportunity in her life to break out of poverty, but who could have expected that she would meet Xiongji a year ago? Xiongji treated her extremely well, even building her this massive manor. She had thought that he was truly in love with her, but at that moment, she realized that she was nothing more than a toy to the other party. Paying no heed to the arguments between those two, Wei Ruyan turned to look at Zheng Yang with a smile on her face. How is it? There was no better trial than life and death to test a person's feelings, and clearly, these two people were only making use of one another. How she wishes to live her life is her own choice. I don't have the right to interfere in her affairs, Zheng Yang replied, but he felt as if his heart was being sliced into innumerable pieces. He had liked this young lady from a very young age, and for the longest of time, his greatest wish had been to get together with her. He had never thought that they would end up like that. I'll give you an opportunity to play the hero. Don't you want to make her regret her decision? There's no better opportunity than this. Wei Ruyan incited Zheng Yang. There's no need for that. I have already removed her from my heart. Zheng Yang shook her head. He realized that it was meaningless even if he made her regret her decision. They were already two people from two different worlds, it was already impossible for them to get together. Besides, upon knowing Su Feifei's nature, even if they did get together, he knew that there would be a lingering doubt in his mind that the other party was only interested in his fortune and power, not he himself. He would hate to put himself in a position where he would constantly be doubting his partner. Since that was the case, why even bother? It doesn't matter whether you have removed your feelings for her or not. If you don't do anything now, she will really lose her life, Wei Ruyan remarked calmly as she continued sipping on her tea. Zheng Yang hurriedly raised his head, only to see that Xiongji's eyes had gone completely red. Xiongji raised his arm and pulled Su Feifei toward him with his zhunqi. Using his finger as a sword, he lightly slit the young lady's pale wrist, causing warm blood to flow out. Transfusing blood and transferring a bloodline were two different matters. Transfusing blood only needed one to use the blood of another to replace their own poisoned blood. The process was not too complicated, and even a normal two-star physician would be able to carry out such an operation. Even though Xiongji had been poisoned, his cultivation had not been suppressed. As long as he carried it out carefully, he would be able to do it himself. Seeing that Su Feifei would really lose her life at this rate, Zheng Yang immediately got up and bellowed, "Hold it right there." In response, Xiongji turned his head around and glared at Zheng Yang coldly. At the same time, Su Feifei heard that familiar voice, and her body trembled. She quickly turned her gaze to the figure walking toward her, and tears began streaming from her eyes. "Zheng Yang, why you are back?" There was no way she would not recognize that voice. It belonged to the young man who had bucked up the courage to confess to her, only to be rejected. Watching as he walked over a step at a time, his figure looked incomparably large under the rays of the sun. Ge means elder brother, but it's also commonly used by ladies to address their lovers. In Legend of the Condor Heroes, Huang Rong addresses her husband, Guo Jing, as Jingij, 15 minutes refers to the 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. Chapter 1860 Xiongji's identity. Even though Zheng Yang did not want to make a move, he knew his junior's temperament too well. She was not so heartless as to allow Xiongji to really kill Su Feifei, but she would only step in at the very last moment. Even though he no longer felt the passion that he once had for the young lady before him, he could not stand to watch her suffering right before his eyes. Zheng Yang's arrival was like a final ray of hope for Su Feifei. Clutching tightly onto that ray of hope, she desperately cried, "Zheng Yang, save me. Don't worry." With a wave of his hand, the energy that Xiong Ji had wrapped around Su Feifei immediately dissipated. "Who are you?" Xiong Ji asked with narrowed eyes. He only had an incense's time left. If he did not quickly find someone to transfuse blood to him, he might just lose his life. This fellow seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, and from the looks of it, he seemed to have some ties with Su Feifei. This made him extremely wary. "It doesn't matter who I am. I just want to ask what your relationship with her is. If you don't like her, why did you get together with her, even building such a huge manor for her?" Zheng Yang asked calmly, as if a judge dictating the life and death of a criminal. After all that he had been through, he was not the young man whom he had been. If not for the fact that Su Feifei was the final fragment of regret in the depths of his heart, the innocent dream of his youth, he would not have come over in the first place. Xiong Ji pondered for a moment before replying. "I do have feelings for her. Otherwise, given my identity, why would I lower myself to live in such a trivial unranked kingdom?" He noticed that the young man had been sitting together with the young lady who had poisoned him, and he realized that he was unable to see through the young man's cultivation as well. Furthermore, the fact that the young man was able to make his zhenqi dissipate was enough to show that the young man was no ordinary figure. All in all, this made him instinctively realize that he could not afford to offend the young man before him. "You have feelings for her?" Zheng Yang scoffed. "If you have feelings for her, how could you ask her to sacrifice herself for your sake? If the two of them truly had feelings for one another, that would probably have been the end of it. After all, he had already let go of his feelings for Su Feifei, so there was no reason for him to interfere in her affairs anymore." However, the middle-aged man had actually disregarded Su Feifei's life just to ensure his own survival. In fact, there was not the slightest compassion or regret that could be seen in his eyes. This made Zheng Yang enraged. For a noble from an empire to come over to an unranked kingdom to build such a massive manor, if it was not due to love, he had to be up to something. "I really do love." Xiong Ji hurriedly tried to explain himself. "There's no need to lie to me. You aren't strong enough to do that," Zheng Yang interjected coldly as he snapped his fingers. "Ah!" With a scream of agony, Xiong Ji collapsed to the ground in pain as sweat drenched his entire body. It was just an instant, but it made him realize the unbridgeable gap between him and the young man before him. It would take a mere thought for the other party to kill him. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Who in the world are you? Just what kind of grudge is there between the two of us? If you want her, I can give her to you." Xiong Ji screamed as he pointed frantically at Su Feifei. Xiong Ji was a person who could sacrifice his loved ones when his life was at stake, let alone a woman whom he had absolutely no feelings for. "Give her to me." Zheng Yang's face turned even colder. "Is she nothing more than a commodity in your eyes, or do you view her as a chip that you can give to others as and when you please so as to guarantee your own survival?" Xiong Ji's teeth clattered in fear. In a moment of rage, Zheng Yang failed to control his own aura, leaving Xiong Ji feeling as if he was facing a ferocious beast. With a thought, the latter would be able to crush him into dust, leaving no trace of him at all. Prior to getting together with Su Feifei, he had made sure to investigate the latter's background. As someone born and raised in Tianqian Royal City, there should have been no way that she would be acquainted with such a powerful person. While Xiong Ji was scared out of his wits, Su Feifei found her mind blanking out in confusion. A year ago, Zheng Yang had been a nobody whom even someone like her could toss to the ground and stomp on. Yet, a year later, it seemed like their positions had completely reversed. Even Xiong Ji, a figure whom Shen Zui dared not offend, was nearly scared out of his wits before him. Just how powerful was the current Zheng Yang? Seeing that Xiong Ji was on the verge of being crushed to death under Zheng Yang's pressure, Wei Ruyan walked over while stretching her back lazily as she remarked with a smile, "Our teacher will get mad if you go too far. Don't say that I didn't warn you." Hearing those words, Zheng Yang retracted his aura before gazing down on Xiong Ji once more. With eyes narrowed into slits, he said, "I only want to hear the absolute truth, so don't you dare play games with me. The person who has just poisoned you is my junior. If I notice any falsehood from you, I will have no choice but to get my junior to conduct a soul search on you. Junior. Seongji's body trembled as he quickly turned his gaze to Wei Ruyan. Meeting with the smile on her face, his body froze on the spot. If even the junior was so powerful, would it not be even more so for the senior? Speak. Who are you, and what is your purpose here? Zheng Yang eyed Seongji coldly as a blue glint flashed from the tip of his spear. In truth, even without relying on soul search, he had several hundred methods that he could use to force the other party to speak. He would truly be a failure as the head of the Combat Master Hall if he did not possess some interrogation method. Seeing the blue glint on the spear, Seongji felt as if someone had grabbed his zhenqi and rattled it all around, leaving him with a terrible aching feeling throughout. If even looking at the blue glint could leave him with such a feeling, he could not imagine the suffering that he would be put under if such a thing penetrated his body. Knowing that there was no escape from this, Seongji gritted his teeth before starting his story. I am Seong Yoon, a treasure hunter. I have been scouring unranked kingdoms over the years, searching for all kinds of treasures, and my efforts eventually led me here. A treasure hunter? Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan exchanged glances before nodding. They had heard of such an occupation before, and the most famous treasure hunters in the world were none other than the Sejun clan. Treasure hunters possessed exceptional means that allowed them to pinpoint the location of hidden artifacts, making them one of the most lucrative occupations on the master-teacher continent. I detected incredible pulsations of energy coming from the place where Su Feifei lived, so I figured that it was an exceptionally powerful artifact, Yoon Seong explained. My first thought was to buy the house, but I quickly dispelled the notion as I knew it would appear rather suspicious if an outsider like me abruptly bought a house in an unranked kingdom. Furthermore, treasure hunting is a long-term process, so there's a risk that an anomaly in my actions will draw the attention of others and place me in trouble. Thus, I used Su Feifei as a cover for me to conduct my work. With the relationship between the two of us serving as cover, I was able to successfully purchase all of the houses in the area without any trouble. After that, in order to ensure that I am able to conduct my operations in privacy, I chose to construct a massive manor right here. As the saying went, danger comes to those who flaunt their wealth. It was true that Yoon Seong's strength was unrivaled in the Tianxian kingdom, but news of the emergence of a superior treasure would indubitably draw in more experts from all around the continent. By then, even with the full force of his clan, it was unlikely that they would be able to claim the treasure for themselves. Thus, he had used marriage as an excuse to buy all of the houses in the area and built a manor before setting up all kinds of protective formations in the area. This way, no one would suspect a thing. You said that you like me, but everything is just a lie so that you can obtain the treasure hidden beneath my home? Those words made Su Feifei's face pale as she fell feebly to the ground. Back then, she had been drawn in by the other party's flowery words and immense wealth. She had thought that she had captured this man with her charms. However, it turned out that what the other party desired had never been her but the treasure hidden beneath her house. Chapter 1861. The Fearsome Stone Table. Knowing that it would be best for him to distance himself as far from Su Feifei as possible, Yoon Seong harumphed coldly. Given your gold digger personality and your subpar looks, do you really think that you are able to move my heart? If not for the fact that there's a treasure beneath your house, there's no way I would have put up with you till now. Enough, Zheng Yang said with a fling of his sleeve. Peng. Struck in the chest, Yoon Seong was sent flying before crashing heavily onto the ground. His face reddened, and a mouthful of crimson blood spurted from his lips. You only have to answer what I want to know, Zheng Yang said coldly. Everything other than that is just a waste of my time. Why yes. Suppressing his injuries, Yoon Seong heaved a sigh of relief upon knowing that he had managed to make it clear that he did not have any relationship with Su Feifei at all. I don't really know about treasure and the like, but over the past year of work, I have gotten near my goal. However, it's just that the barrier around the treasure is too strong, such that I'm unable to breach it due to my lacking cultivation. Zheng Yang pondered with a deep frown for a moment before replying, Take me there. For someone of the Sejun clan to go through so much effort just to acquire some treasure, It was likely that the treasure was truly nothing ordinary. Since that was the case, he really should head over to take a look. All right. Yoon Seong nodded. Given that his life was in the other party's hands, there was no way he could turn the other party down. Thus, Zhang Yang released his pressure on Yoon Seong, and under the latter's lead, they entered the manor. As for Su Feifei, she stood hesitantly on the spot for a moment before choosing to follow them. As soon as Zhang Yang and Wei Ruyan entered the manor, the first thing they noticed were innumerable isolation formations set up all around. It was really no exaggeration to say that the manor was an enclosed fortress by itself, such that nothing inside could get out. Proceeding ahead, it did not take long for them to stop before a majestic hall. Pushing the door open, they saw a massive pit lying right ahead of them. There was a huge pile of white bones all around, forming a sight of desolation. You killed so many people just to acquire the treasure. Zhang Yang narrowed his eyes as killing intent seeped out of his body. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. The responsibility of the Combat Master Hall lay not only in fending off the otherworldly demonic tribe but to maintain the peace and prosperity of mankind as well. To kill so many humans just to acquire a treasure was already an infringement of the Combat Master Hall's moral code. No, I didn't kill them. They were workers whom I spent a fortune to hire. They are in charge of the excavation job, but not too long ago, when they dug up a stone tablet, an aura was released, and all of them died on the spot. For fear that it would draw suspicion, I reduced their corpses to white bones and left them here. Yoon Seong explained in a fluster. I have already compensated the families of the workers handsomely. Even though I desire the treasure a lot, I dare not kill the innocent for the sake of it. Stone tablet. Knowing that these workers were already dead and that it would be difficult to continue investigating this matter, Zheng Yang decided to put that matter aside for the time being and inquire about the other suspicion that he had. It's located at the bottom of the pit. I dispatched 10 death soldiers to inspect it, but all of them died as soon as they reached the vicinity of the stone tablet. So, I'm not too sure about what's going on either, Yoon Seong explained with a bitter look on his face. He had thought that he had stumbled upon a huge treasure, but who could have known that the death toll would just keep rising higher and higher? He had already sunk in too much to allow himself to back off with nothing in hand. As there was no one else who was willing to approach the stone tablet, Yoon Seong had no choice but to turn to Shen Zui in hopes of acquiring some death soldiers from him. It was just that he had never expected to stumble upon those two experts shortly after leaving his manor. Let's head down and take a look. Hearing that a stone tablet had actually taken away so many lives, Zheng Yang was growing more and more intrigued. I am a little too weak for this, so I'll leave the two of you to be. Yoon Seong's face paled. It went without saying that he did not dare enter the pit himself. He was afraid that he would die just like many others that had gone before him. Cut the CR*P and get moving, Wei Ruyan harumphed. With a wave of her hand, Yoon Seong was thrown into the pit before he could release a scream of agony. Following which, Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan leaped in. The pit was roughly several hundred meters deep. There were many night illumination pearls placed all around, making the interior shine as though it was morning. As soon as they reached the bottom of the pit, Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan immediately began looking around, only to have frowns creep onto their faces shortly after. This aura feels a little weird, Zheng Yang said after a moment of careful examination. It's the aura of an ancient sage, Wei Ruyan said. She turned to Yoon Seong beside her and asked, where's the stone tablet supposed to be? It's supposed to be down there. Gulping from fright, Yoon Seong pointed in front of him. Knowing that there was something sinister about this place, Zheng Yang took a deep breath and whipped out his spear. Hula! He flicked his wrist lightly, and a large pile of sand was raked up, revealing a massive stone tablet. There were mysterious, unreadable inscriptions on the stone tablet, and it emanated an air of killing intent. Just looking at the stone tablet was enough to leave one with a splitting headache. The aura of an ancient sage that the two of them had felt earlier originated from that very stone tablet. This is the stone tablet that I talked about. Masters, I am a little too weak for this, so I'll take my leave now. With quivering lips, Yoon Seong immediately turned around and darted away fearfully. However, barely after taking 2 steps, his body suddenly froze on the spot. No matter how much he struggled, he found himself unable to go a single step further. With us around, there's no way you will lose your life. If we die, there won't be anyone to treat your poison, and you'll die, Wei Ruyan remarked calmly. Yoon Seong was really on the verge of bursting into tears. The other party was right. He was afflicted with severe poison, so if these 2 died, he would be the next to follow no matter where he fled. I'll head over to take a look. Taking a deep breath, Zheng Yang placed his spear in front of him before approaching the stone tablet with wary, controlled steps. Before even reaching the stone tablet, he suddenly felt concentrated killing intent gushing in his direction, seemingly attempting to tear him in 2. In the face of such might, any great sage cultivators would have succumbed to the immense pressure by now. However, Zheng Yang was an ancient sage cultivator, as well as the head of the Combat Master Hall. He had tempered his mind before, making him exceptionally resilient to the otherworldly demon's junchi of slaughter. No matter how concentrated the killing intent was, it would not pose a threat to him. Walking up to the stone tablet, he noticed that it was emanating a warm glow. As if the tens of thousands of years that it had spent buried underground had not damaged it in the slightest, its inscriptions looked as if they were freshly engraved. Tracing the inscriptions with his finger, Zheng Yang shook his head. These are characters from the ancient era. I can't read them at all. Due to the limitations of his knowledge, he could not discern the content of the inscription. If their teacher was with them, they might still have been able to do something about it. Jeji. Seeing that Zheng Yang actually dared touch the stone tablet, Yoon Seong's teeth clattered together in fright. All of the workers and death soldiers that he had sent in had passed away even when they were standing a long distance away from the stone tablet. Yet, this young man was able to walk up to it and even touch it directly with his hands. Just how powerful was he? Why would such a formidable figure suddenly come to a place as minor as Tianqian Kingdom? Wait a moment. He recognizes Su Feifei, he uses a spear, and his junior is a master practitioner of poison. Could they possibly be? All of a sudden, Yoon Seong's body froze on the spot as 2 names surfaced in his mind. Even though he had not been in his clan over the past few years, there was probably no one in the world who did not know of the deeds of that legendary man and his many disciples. Thinking about it, they seemed to have their roots in Tianqian Kingdom. Could the young man before him possibly be the most talented individual the Combat Master Hall had ever had, Hall Master Zheng? He knew that the new Hall Master of the Combat Master Hall went by the surname of Zheng, but he had not been too sure of the other party's full name. However, now that he was raking his mind, he seemed to have the impression that the other party's full name was Zheng Yang. An ordinary woman like Su Feifei actually had the fancy of the incumbent head of the Combat Master Hall? This. Sweat droplets began filling Yoon Seong's head as he felt a hoarseness at the back of his throat. He felt as if he would pass out at any moment. Chapter 1862. A corpse. Ignoring Yoon Seong, who was facing the most severe mental breakdown in his entire life, the frown on Zheng Yang's forehead grew deeper and deeper as he walked around the stone tablet to take a closer look. Then, he turned back to look at Wei Ruyan. Wei Ruyan nodded in response, as if affirming Zheng Yang's judgment. So, Zheng Yang took a deep breath before taking several steps back. Following which, his spear shot forth with formidable might. Hula! Spatial ripples appeared in the air as the spear struck the direct center of the stone tablet. Catcher! The sound of the formation being torn apart echoed as the entire stone tablet trembled. A huge crack appeared in the ground, forming a passageway that led further downward. The smell of decay was absent in the passageway. However, there was the scent of something ancient and sinister, almost like a pathway leading to the netherworld. Let's head in to take a look. The brave Zheng Yang was the first one to step into the passageway, and Wei Ruyan followed behind him. The passageway was dark and slightly damp. The inscriptions on the wall had sealed the passageway tightly, such that those whose cultivation hadn't reached ancient sage would never be able to sense its existence. This seems to be a pathway constructed back during Kong Shi's era, Wei Ruyan said as she inspected her surroundings carefully. In truth, The passageway looked as good as new, but the construction method and the inscriptions carried clear indications of the ancient era, thus hinting at its age. Heading down the passageway, they traveled for several dozen li over the course of an hour before finally arriving before a stone chamber. Zheng Yang placed his spear before his chest in preparation to meet with any unexpected circumstances. At the same time, Wei Ruyan flicked her wrist and embedded several night illumination pearls to the walls all around, bringing illumination to the area. The stone chamber was roughly 40 meters in diameter, and at the center was a coffin made out of bluestone. It emanated an extremely historic aura. "There's only a coffin in here?" Wei Ruyan frowned in astonishment. Which fool would construct an underground passageway that extended several dozen li and seal it with a stone tablet that only ancient sages could breach just to store a single coffin? It was ridiculously extravagant, was it not? Perplexed, Zheng Yang slowly approached the coffin. Lifting his spear, he was just about to use it to pry open the coffin when a sharp aura suddenly emanated from the coffin. Following which, he suddenly felt a jolt in his hands. Wang! Zheng Yang's spear fell right to the ground, as if paying respects to the coffin. What happened? Noticing that something was amiss, Wei Ruyan swiftly gathered her poison aura as she rushed forward, ready to reinforce Zheng Yang at any moment. "My spear has been intercepted by another's spear intent. It seems like the person in the coffin comprehended a higher level of spear intent than me," Zheng Yang replied in astonishment. Even though his spear was not an ancient sage artifact, through prolonged contact with him, it would not pale too much in comparison to one. Despite that, it was still forced to bow in submission to the coffin. It was apparent that whatever was in the coffin commanded a higher level of spear intent than him, rendering his spear utterly powerless before it. "Wait a moment. Are you telling me that the thing in the coffin possesses spearmanship more advanced than you?" Wei Ruyan could hardly believe what she was hearing. Her senior had learned his spearmanship directly from their teacher, and he had already reached the level of spear quintessence. It was no joke to say that he was the second most formidable spear user in their era. Despite that, he was actually saying that the thing inside the coffin was more formidable than him. How could that be? No matter what, we have to open it to take a look. "Junior, I need you to coordinate together with me in order to forcefully pry open the coffin," Zheng Yang said. Wei Ruyan nodded in agreement. So, the two of them took their positions on the two ends of the coffin. With an understanding glance, Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan raised their hands simultaneously and grabbed forth. They were both ancient sage experts who had received Zhongxian's personal guidance over the course of a month, causing their fighting prowess to rise to an exceptional level. Even blood reincarnation realm experts would be pushed to a corner against their combined might, let alone a mere coffin. Jia! A hideous screeching sound echoed in the air as a crack appeared on the coffin. An overwhelming aura surged into the sky, threatening to collapse the entire underground cavern on them. Zheng Yang quickly sealed the aura with a wave of his hand, and only after ensuring that it was not leaking at all did he finally proceed forward slowly. The aura of ancient sages was destructive in nature. Even if a sliver of it leaked out, it could cause a huge calamity. Of course, cultivators of their caliber could deal with it easily, but the same could not be said for the civilians of Tianxian Royal City. Their carelessness could easily spell countless deaths. Walking up to the coffin, they peeked inward, only to see a corpse lying still within. Even though years had passed, the corpse had retained its flesh and blood. From its external appearance, it looked as if it was just a person sleeping. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. It's the corpse of an ancient sage. The eyebrows of the two of them shot up. Only the corpse of an ancient sage could possibly retain such frightening might even after death. Only the corpse of an ancient sage was non-decayable, allowing it to retain its external appearance even after tens of thousands of years. This is. Taking a closer look at the corpse, Zheng Yang suddenly thought of something that caused his face to pale, and his body stiffened up in shock. "What's wrong?" Wei Ruyan asked in intrigue. Even though they did not interact with one another frequently, she did have a good grasp of Zheng Yang's personality. This senior of hers had a daring and reckless personality, so it was perplexing to see him getting shaken by a mere corpse. "He is Ancient sage Ran Qiu. Zheng Yang exclaimed as he clenched his fists tightly. Ancient sage Ran Qiu? You mean the disciple of Kong Shi who boasted the greatest fighting prowess, the founder of the Combat Master Hall? Wei Ruyan was taken aback. That's right. Zheng Yang took in a deep breath to calm down the chaos in his mind. Ancient sage Ran Qiu had been one of the 10 apostles under Kong Shi's tutelage, and he had been the strongest ancient sage aside from Kong Shi himself. Just the fact that he was the founder of the Combat Master Hall was testimony to his tremendous strength. On 2 different occasions, when he inherited the position of the progeny of Combat and Hall Master, he had knelt before ancient sage Ran Qiu's sculpture, which looked identical to the corpse before him. This was also why he had identified the other party with a single glance. To think that one of the greatest disciples of Kong Shi, the second strongest ancient sage in the world, would actually have his corpse buried there. This was something that could not be found in any records. It was no wonder his spear had bowed down as soon as it met with the coffin. Ancient sage Ran Qiu was a spearmaster, and the dragonbone divine spear was something that he had forged on his own. The fact that the other party had forged such a powerful artifact showed how deep his understanding of spearmanship was. It was little wonder that the other party's comprehension of spearmanship had even exceeded his own. After recovering from his shock, Zheng Yang turned around and instructed, "Junior, I'll need you to quickly return and inform our teacher of this matter. Meanwhile, I'll stand guard here." The scale of the issue went beyond their initial expectations. Given the severity of the matter, it was best for them to bring their teacher in to help make a judgment. UN. Understanding the logic behind Zheng Yang's decision, Wei Ruyan immediately turned around and flitted back to the surface. After Wei Ruyan's departure, Zheng Yang walked slowly around the coffin, wanting to take a closer look at the elder who had founded the Combat Master Hall. But all of a sudden, a series of mechanical clacking noises echoed in the air, and yet another passageway surfaced beneath the coffin. Zheng Yang hesitated for a moment upon seeing this sight before deciding to venture in. Bam! As soon as he stepped into the passageway, the ray of light above him vanished. The passageway had instantaneously closed on him. Faced with such a situation, Zheng Yang frowned in bewilderment, but he did not panic. He took out a night illumination pearl before carefully heading deeper into the passageway. A few steps later, he found another massive hall appearing before him. Its layout was very similar to the hall before, and there was also a coffin positioned at the very center of the room. Zheng Yang pondered for a moment before walking toward the coffin. He raised his hand and pried open the lid, thus revealing a figure before him. When he got a closer look at the corpse, it was as if a mini-explosion had occurred in his mind. He hurriedly retreated several steps, till his back was pressed against the wall. Yet, even so, the disbelief in his mind did not vanish at all. It was a very long while before a husky voice finally came out of his throat. Kong Shi. Chapter 1863. Kong Shi is dead. The corpse lying in the coffin was none other than the world's teacher, Kong Shi. Had he not ascended to a higher dimension? Why was his corpse there? Zheng Yang's mind blanked out in that instant. No thoughts came to his mind at all, and he did not dare think any deeper into the matter. This was so huge that if he spoke a wrong word, it could lead to a major catastrophe. Kong Shi was the pillar of support within the Master-Teacher Pavilion. Even though he had vanished from the world, many still held his teachings dear to them and viewed him as their ultimate aspiration. No one could have ever thought that the great Kong Shi would actually be dead there. Just like the sculptures erected in his form outside, he had a gentle smile on his lips, reminiscent of a kind teacher. It was as if he had been killed in the midst of his lecture. But given the strength that Kong Shi wielded, who could possibly have the ability to kill him? And who was the one who had buried him there, such that even the Master-Teacher Pavilion and the 100 School of Philosophers were completely oblivious to it? Zheng Yang's heart beat wildly as he felt his throat turning dry. There were so many words at the back of his mind, but he was unable to voice a single one of them. Eventually, he chose to simply sit on the floor and wait for himself to calm down. It had been a feeling of shock when he saw ancient sage Ran Qiu's corpse, and after finding the second corpse, there was nothing but horror in his mind. It was perfectly normal for anyone in the world to die, but for such a thing to happen to the revered Kongsha as well. The faith of countless would shatter in an instant. Zheng Yang was so flustered that he did not know what he should do at all. It's fine, it's fine. Everything will be resolved once teacher is here. Zheng Yang struggled to his feet as he shook whatever thoughts he had out of his mind. Having followed his teacher for so long, he knew that there was no difficulty in the world that could bring his teacher down. It was fine that he could not find a solution out of the current quandary he was seeing. All he had to do was wait. With such a thought, he left the hall, intending to return to where he had come from. However, his feet suddenly froze in place. A surge of power washed over him, and his consciousness blurred. Putong. Silence. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Sitting in the room that he had previously lectured in, Zhongxian felt his state of mind flowing freely, extending into the distance along with his thoughts. He had only been an ordinary librarian in his previous life. It was beyond his imagination that the day would come when he would transcend over to another world. It had been a period of confusion and panic when he first transcended over. He had no idea what he should do, and the only desire that drove him forward was the wish to live on. It had taken some time for everything to settle down and for him to assimilate into the world. All of the memories of his life surged into his head, be it his previous life, the period after his transcension, the moment that he first stepped into the library of Heaven's Path. Slowly, something seemed to sprout within Zhongxian. It was a strength that seemed to exceed even the heavens themselves. It was going to break free of the ground and blossom into something beautiful. In his moment of enlightenment, flurried footsteps sounded in his ears. He slowly opened his eyes, only to see Wei Ruyan standing before him. Hearing Wei Ruyan's words, Zhongxian abruptly rose to his feet. Did you say that you found ancient sage Ran Qiu's corpse? Ancient sage Ran Qiu was the strongest out of Kongsha's many disciples, and he had been a figure whom innumerable combat masters looked up to. Why would his corpse be found there, not to mention that it was even hidden in an underground hall several dozen li deep? Bring me over to take a look. Unable to bear his curiosity, he hurriedly followed Wei Ruyan into Yun Xiong's manor and into the underground passageway. It was not long before he arrived in a hall with a coffin right at the center. Upon taking a closer look, a tight frown formed between Zhongxian's eyebrows. Judging from outer appearance and the aura, he does seem to be ancient sage Ran Qiu. Back when he was at the White Creek Mountain, he had the opportunity to meet ancient sage Ran Qiu's fragmented soul. The corpse that was right before him shared the same appearance, and even the auras that they emanated were very similar. The corpse likely belonged to ancient sage Ran Qiu. You should come over and take a look as well, Zhongxian said with a flick of his wrist. The dragonbone divine spear flew forth from Zhongxian's waist and transformed into a majestic black dragon in the air. Looking down at the coffin beneath it, it descended to the ground and kneeled down. Master. The body of the massive dragon trembled intensely as slight whimpers escaped from its mouth. It was an artifact forged by ancient sage Ran Qiu. All along, it had thought that ancient sage Ran Qiu would ascend to a higher dimension together with Kongsha after sealing it in the ancient domain at White Creek Mountain, but who could have known that he would die just like that? It seems like it's real then, Zhongxian remarked. He looked around the hall, and a slight frown appeared on his forehead. He turned to Wei Ruyan and asked, "Where is Zheng Yang?" I'm not too sure. He should have been here." Wei Ruyan was taken aback. Given that Zheng Yang had asked her to get their teacher, it stood to reason that he would be waiting for her there. Why was he nowhere to be seen? Zhongxian scanned the area carefully, but there was no trace of Zheng Yang to be found. Eventually, he placed his palm lightly on ancient sage Ran Qiu's corpse. If he wanted to make sense of this place, the best way was to do it through the Library of Heaven's Path. Flaws. The Library of Heaven's Path jolted, but no book was formed. Zhongxian shook his head in disappointment. It was hard to tell whether it was because ancient sage Ran Qiu was only a corpse at the moment or that the place had the ability to obstruct the view of the heavens. It should be the latter, Zhongxian thought as he continued surveying his surroundings. He had used the Library of Heaven's Path on corpses before, and the only limitation was that he was unable to gather much information on the individual's life prior to their death. However, as for the other details such as the tier of their corpse and so on, it would still have been compiled and reflected in a book. This was rather similar to what usually happened when he checked artifacts. However, the fact that nothing had happened meant that the entire place was likely concealed from the heavens. This also explained why no seers had been able to uncover the fact that the strongest disciple of Kongsha was actually dead there. This is an ancient land that hasn't been ravaged by the wars between mankind and the otherworldly demons. It offers the hope of recovering a diminished bloodline. Could this be somewhat linked to the reason why ancient sage Ran Chou's corpse is buried here? Zhong Xian began trying to put clues together to reason the happenings there. Aside from the fact that most ancient domains were thin in spiritual energy, making them environments unsuitable for cultivation, there were actually many mystical things about them. For one, he had transcended over to an ancient domain, as well as the fact that ancient sage Ran Chou's corpse had been found here. Could there be any link between those two matters? Zhong Xian activated his Eye of Insight to do a thorough scan once more. "There's a passageway down here," Zhong Xian remarked as he stomped his feet lightly. "Jiyaya." The coffin began to move to the side, revealing the passageway hidden beneath it. He exchanged glances with Wei Ruyan for a moment heading down the passageway. Naturally, Wei Ruyan quickly followed along as well. The layout of the second hall was an exact replica of the first. Even the locations of the coffins were identical. It really felt as if they were trying to navigate their way through an ancient labyrinth. Other than the coffin, the entire room was empty. There was not a single person to be seen. "Teacher, it seems like Senior Zhengyang was here," Wei Ruyan suddenly said. Zhong Xian turned to look at Wei Ruyan. "There's a slight indentation on the wall over there. Judging from the shape, it seems to have been left behind by him," Wei Ruyan said as she pointed toward the wall. Turning to look, he found that there was indeed a deep indentation in the wall. The size was a match with Zhengyang's physique. Chances were that it had been created when Zhengyang's back was pressed against the wall. "You're right. He might have seen the corpse in the coffin and backed away out of fear," Zhong Xian reasoned out as a spark of curiosity emerged in his eyes. Just what could be in the coffin that would frighten Zhengyang even more than ancient sage Ran Chou's corpse? "Let's open it and take a look," Zhong Xian instructed as he walked up to the coffin. Jia. The lid of the coffin was pried open, revealing a figure right before them. He had a calm and peaceful look on his face, as if he had just been put to rest not too long ago. Seeing this sight, Zhong Xian felt his blood running cold. The corpse that was inside the coffin was none other than Zhengyang. Chapter 1864. A powerful barrier lying in the coffin, there was a hint of a smile on Zhengyang's lips. His body was still warm, and it looked as if he would open his eyes at any moment. "Senior." Concentrated poison aura seeped out from Wei Ruyan's body as strong emotions began building up within her. Despite her cold exterior, she did care a lot for the others. While she had put Zhengyang down earlier, just seeing his corpse made it feel as if her heart was going to explode. If she knew who the culprit was, there was no doubt that she would have dashed right in to tear that person into shreds. "Control your emotions," Zhong Xian bellowed. "Why yes." Hearing her teacher's words, Wei Ruyan swiftly snapped out of her condition. Nevertheless, she could not stop trembling as she looked at the corpse in the coffin. "This isn't Zhengyang," Zhong Xian said. He had also received the shock of his life when he first saw the face of the corpse. However, as he took a closer look, he had swiftly realized that something was amiss. The body was simply too lifelike. There would inevitably be some changes to a person's body after their death, no matter how powerful they might have been in life. Furthermore, he was well aware of Zhengyang's character. He would never be one to accept death so peacefully. Even at the cost of his life, he would surely rip off a bone from the culprit before breathing his last breath. More importantly, he had left a surge of his Heaven's Path Zhenqi in Zhengyang's body, so there was no way that anyone would be able to kill Zhengyang without drawing his notice. If it isn't Senior Zhengyang, then... Wei Ruyan was taken aback by what Zhong Xian was saying. No matter how she looked at or touched the corpse, it was very clear that it belonged to Zhengyang. She could not imagine anything in the world that could possibly create such a lifelike replica of him. It's most likely an illusion that blurs the distinction between truth and falsehood. Something that can even deceive the heavens, Zhongxian murmured as he walked back and forth in the hall. If the one to appear had not been Zheng Yang, he might not have considered the possibility that it was an illusion. This was because the sight before him was too real, and the library of Heaven's Path just happened to be crippled. An illusion? Wei Ruyan looked around her before eventually pinching her own cheeks. Ouch! Dragonbone Divine Spear! Zhongxian called out. Hula! The Dragonbone Divine Spear flew over from the passageway. With his spear in hand, Zhongxian felt boundless strength surging into his body. He raised the tip of his spear and directed it right toward the stone coffin. Boom! The coffin was pierced through, and the entire chamber dissipated like bubbles. The next instant, they saw Zheng Yang lying diagonally by the wall, unmoving. From the looks of it, it seemed like he had passed out. What was right before them was not a coffin but a massive barrier that resembled a mirror. It seemed like the two of them had walked into the world within the mirror, thus blurring their perception of reality. It's actually an illusion, the Dragonbone Divine Spear exclaimed excitedly. If that's the case, could the old master's corpse be fake as well? So, the old master actually isn't dead yet. It had been a huge blow to it seeing the old master's corpse appearing right before its eyes. Since this was all an illusion, could that corpse possibly be an illusion as well? I'm sorry, but ancient sage Ran Qiu's body was likely real. Zhongxian shook his head. It's the sheer power of his corpse that has been sustaining everything here. If his body had been fake, this place wouldn't have been concealed from the heavens. As much as he hated to shatter the Dragonbone Divine Spear's hopes, the truth was the truth. The moment that the illusion dissipated, he had come to realize the truth as well. An illusion that he had been unable to discern and was able to deceive even the heavens was bound to require a vast amount of energy in order to sustain it, and the very center of this formation was ancient sage Ran Qiu's corpse. Only the second strongest ancient sage in the world could possibly have the ability to beguile him, such that he failed to notice that he was in an illusion for a moment. So, the old master is really dead. The Dragonbone Divine Spear fell to the floor weakly. If the corpse was real, it meant that ancient sage Ran Qiu was truly dead. It's still too early to say whether ancient sage Ran Qiu is truly dead or not. Just because the corpse is real doesn't mean that he has already passed away. Take the old sovereign Chen Yong for example. His body has already been buried, and his cultivation has already been passed on to Liu Yang. However, his soul has been taken away by a deity from the azure, and there's a good chance that he could be revived in the future, Zhongxian said. Those who have become as strong as ancient sage Ran Qiu are unlikely to die that easily. Even Vicious could revive despite being divided into so many pieces, let alone ancient sage Ran Qiu. Even if the corpse was real, as long as his soul remained, he could not be said to be dead in the truest sense. Hearing that explanation, the Dragonbone Divine Spear's glazed eyes cleared up a little as it heaved a sigh of relief. You're right. First, we have to wake Zheng Yang up, Zhongxian said. Something must have happened for him to be unconscious. With a tap of his finger, he sent a surge of Heaven's Path Zhenqi into his student's body. A few moments later, Zheng Yang slowly opened his eyes. Zheng Yang had always been an extremely strong-willed individual, and for even someone like him to be knocked out cold, it was likely that he had received some kind of astonishing shock that resulted in an intense fluctuation in his state of mind. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience please click for visiting. Teacher. Zheng Yang's face reddened as he quickly got to his feet. You were the one who entered this room first. What happened in here for you to pass out like this? Wei Ruyan asked. Rubbing his head to alleviate the splitting headache in his mind, Zheng Yang took a deep breath before he began his explanation. I found the passageway leading here, and there was a hall similar to the one above. There was a coffin as well, and when I opened it to take a look, I saw Kongshi's body. Kongshi's body? Zhongxian frowned. They had seen Zheng Yang's corpse whereas Zheng Yang had seen Kongshi's body. Was there some kind of link between the two? Regardless of what is happening here, It's likely to have something to do with this barrier. I'm certain that this place has something to do with Kongsha. Unable to make a precise deduction with the limited evidence they had over here, Zhongxian decided to put the matter aside for the moment and worked on things that were more certain. Thus, he turned his gaze toward the massive mirror-like barrier in front of him. The answers that he sought were likely to be beyond there. The only problem left was to figure out a way to get to the other side. Let me give it a try. Zhongxian raised the dragonbone divine spear in his hand and pierced straight ahead. Hula! The spear tore through space, ripping a hole right through the world. In a flash, it struck the barrier squarely. Boom! A massive energy swept across the area. Zhongxian's body stiffened a little before being forcefully knocked back. His back crashed heavily into the wall behind, causing his face to turn pale and his breathing to become a little ragged. In a brief moment, he had already sustained significant injuries. It didn't work. Zhongxian was astonished. His might, paired with the dragonbone divine spear, even granted him the strength to put up a fight against the deity that he had met previously. Considering that he had put his full strength behind the pierce, it was unthinkable that he had failed to inflict the slightest damage on the barrier. On the contrary, he had suffered a backlash so severe that he had almost spurted blood. It was insane. Just what in the world was the barrier made of to be so terrifying? Master, let me give it a try. Vicious voice sounded in his mind. Go ahead. Zhongxian nodded as he released Vicious from the Book of Heaven's path. Vicious had already completed his body, and he had assimilated the straw garment. His current strength could be said to be on par with Dimension Shatterer Realm primary stage cultivators. If he made a move, he might just be able to destroy the barrier. Chapter 1865. Becoming the world's teacher. A massive pair of hands reached out from the book, causing the entire underground hall to tremble non-stop, as if there was an earthquake. The massive hands slammed powerfully upon the barrier. Boom! A powerful shockwave gushed out into the surroundings, forcing Zhongxian and the others to back away uncontrollably. By the time the storm calmed down, they turned their sights to the barrier once more, only to see it still intact. There was not the slightest damage to be seen. On the other hand, Vicious' fingers had started bleeding. Master, let me give it another try. With his attack failing to breach the barrier, Vicious lowered his head in embarrassment. There's no need for that. If you make another move, it's likely that the entire underground hall will collapse on us, Zhongxian said. The underground hall was already at its limits after the multiple impacts. If they continued, there was no doubt that it would collapse on them. Of course, given their strength, they would not sustain the slightest damage. What was worrisome was the countless citizens of the Tianqian royal city living above. The might of the ancient sages was simply too great. If the strength of a Dimension Shatterer realm cultivator ran amok in the slightest, the city could very well be reduced to a living hell. What should we do then? We can't do it the forceful way. There's bound to be another way to bypass this barrier, Zhongxian said with a smile. The fact that even a Dimension Shatterer realm cultivator like you is unable to breach it meant that the barrier was set up by Kongsha. Going down this line of thought, I think I should be able to figure something out. The reason Zhongxian had Vicious made a move was to test the limits of the barrier. The fact that it could withstand Vicious' attack meant that it likely had something to do with Kongsha. Taking a deep breath, Zhongxian walked up to the barrier and infused his Celestial Master Teacher aura within. Given that they were both Celestial Master Teachers, perhaps this might be the key to resolving the bottleneck before him. Wang. As the aura flowed in, the barrier suddenly began wavering. Countless insights regarding education and mentorship flowed into his head, leaving him with a deeper impression of the master-teacher occupation. It was as if all of the ideals that Kongsha embraced had been imparted to him. Using the world as an example, one can write their minds to align with nature and encompass everything in the world. A voice echoed in Zhongxian's head. It could have been a lingering thought from Kongsha, but at the same time, it seemed like it was his own interpretation as well. A celestial master teacher was a master teacher recognized by the heavens. Using the heavens as an example, celestial master teachers were able to swiftly rise through the ranks. However, if they wished to surpass the heavens, The difficulties they would face were manifold. Liu Yang, Zheng Yang, and the others, for example, had learned under him as his direct disciples, allowing their cultivation to rise far beyond the speed of ordinary cultivators. However, if they wished to surpass him, well, this was something that they would never be able to achieve in their lifetime. It was not that they were weak, but most of their cultivation techniques that they had practiced came from him, and it had formed the foundation of their cultivation. If they wanted to surpass him, they would have either to have to gain a deeper understanding of his cultivation techniques or overthrow everything that they had learned before. Kong Shi had more than 3,000 disciples in the world, but not a single one of them was able to surpass him. From there, it was apparent how difficult it was to surpass one's lineage. I think I understand. I am a celestial master teacher, a master teacher acknowledged by the heavens. In other words, my existence is viewed to be beneath the heavens. As such, it's nigh impossible for me to comprehend any rules that surpass the heavens. Since that's the case, why should I remain as a celestial master teacher? It was as if enlightenment had suddenly struck Zhong Xian as his eyes widened in realization. Since you deny me of my breakthrough, I shall be a celestial master teacher no more. Instead, I'll become the world's teacher. If he wished to achieve a breakthrough to ancient sage, he would be able to do it easily through his spear quintessence, saber quintessence, or even fist quintessence and the like. However, once he did so, everything would be settled. It would be nigh impossible for him to find a path unique to him anymore. As such, he had been searching for something that he could say that was his and his alone. This was also why he had been suppressing his cultivation all along, refusing to achieve a breakthrough over the past 2 months. And at that very moment, he seemed to have found a direction. The fact that he could receive the acknowledgement of the heavens and become a celestial master teacher meant that the world was sentient. Since that was the case, why did he necessarily have to be the one being acknowledged? Why could he not become its teacher instead? If one took the world as an example and learned from it, one would never be able to surpass the limits of the world. On the other hand, as the world's teacher, his position would be above the world right from the start. Naturally, the path leading to ancient sage would be much smoother than ever. However, becoming the world's teacher is easier said than done. I have to understand the world and grasp its strengths and flaws. Only then will I become worthy of that position. More importantly, I will have to forsake my title as a celestial master teacher. His mind churned at an incredible speed in order to map out a feasible plan. Once he had confirmed his direction, he closed his eyes and decisively released all of his celestial master teacher aura at once. All gains were bound to accompany some loss. If one wanted to fill a sack with gold ingots, one would have to toss away the silver ingots in it first. While the celestial master teacher might be a position that almost all desired, it had become nothing more than a restriction on him. Thus, there was no pity in casting it away. His success had always been built on his diligence, tenacity, upright character, and unyielding spirit. As for the role of celestial master teacher, that was a mere transient title. As his state of mind settled down, he began expelling the energy that he had absorbed from his 5 acknowledgements of celestial master teacher. An aura so concentrated gushed out and rose right into the azure sky as if a pillar of light. Reaching the tip of the world, it exploded and transformed into innumerable currents of energy that dissipated into the surroundings. As the celestial master teacher aura dissipated, Zhong Xian's will slowly floated into the sky. The will of the heavens crushed down on his will, commencing a battle of willpower. The Baijiang Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. The path of teacherhood is centered around 3 aspects: the impartation of knowledge, the proper conduct of one's character, and the enlightenment of one's heart. The reason Kong Shi's teachings were able to reach everyone in the world is due to the lack of discrimination in his impartation. His heart was vast enough to encompass the world. As a master teacher, you should constantly bear your responsibility in mind. The lineages of mankind must be properly passed down from generation to generation in order to ensure our survival through the ages. A bunch of newly qualified master teachers were standing before the teacher acknowledgement hall, and an elder was lecturing them with a solemn look on his face. Yes, the master teachers nodded in response. From the moment that they became master teachers, they came to know of their responsibilities, and they chose to accept the burden. For tens of thousands of years, the master-teacher pavilion had both been respected and humiliated by the population. Nevertheless, the reason it was able to withstand the trial of time and remain at the top of the world was because of the unchanging spirit passed down across the generations. Wonderful! Kneel down and pay respects to the ancestors. The elder was just about to step aside to allow the newly qualified master teachers to pay respects to the ancestral tablets when the ground suddenly started trembling. The ancestral tablets placed neatly on the altar began to shake non-stop. Voila! All of the ancestral tablets fell down simultaneously, and they were all facing the same direction. What's going on? The elder widened his eyes in shock. He quickly turned toward where the ancestral tablets had fallen, and he caught sight of a silhouette formed out of clouds and rainbows. Dressed in a long robe, that figure seemed to tower over the entire world, making it impossible to see his body fully. The figure was faced against them, but the aura that he emanated made others dare not look at him directly. Instead, it seemed to compel one to bow down before him. "That's a celestial master teacher," the elder exclaimed as his body stiffened in shock. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. In all of history, the only person who was known to have been a celestial master teacher was Kongsha himself. Many master teachers had sought to emulate his path afterward, but no matter how hard they tried, they had been unable to accomplish that feat. Yet, at that very moment, there was another celestial master teacher among them, Putong. Unable to hold back his agitation any longer, the elder kneeled to the ground and bowed. The elder glared at the newly appointed master teachers, who were still blanked out from the abrupt turn of events, and bellowed, "A new celestial master teacher has descended among us. An era of prosperity lies right ahead. Hurry up and bow down." Why yes. The crowd quickly got to their knees and bowed deeply. The information regarding a celestial master teacher was only passed down within the master teacher pavilion, but at this very moment, countless people were witnessing this sight together. The faraway figure had his legs firmly planted on the ground, and his body was shouldering the weight of the heavens. This was a sign of utmost intimacy with the world, but the figure pushed the two away with a look of disdain on his face. He was actually scorning the heavens. Chapter 1866. The Shocked Master Teacher Pavilion. Wait a minute. One of the master teachers bowing the ground noticed that something was amiss. Aren't celestial master teachers individuals who have earned the recognition of the heavens? Why does it seem like that person is looking down on the heavens? Logically speaking, when a celestial master teacher received the acknowledgement of the heavens, they should accept it with the utmost pride and glory. Yet, the towering person was trying his best to shake it off as if something disgusting had latched onto him. Looking down on the heavens? Stunned by that remark, the elder raised his head, only to see the towering figure shaking his body wildly. He was desperately trying to prevent any of the aura that had come from the heavens from getting stuck to him. The elder gulped before muttering with reddened eyes, "He is actually rejecting the acknowledgement of the heavens. Does he not want to be a celestial master teacher anymore?" The history of Kongsha's acknowledgements as a celestial master teacher had been fully detailed in the records and passed down through the ages. Even though many years had passed since then, the significance of a celestial master teacher had never vanished from the minds of the population. But somehow, events did not seem to be going in the direction that they were expected to go in. At the same time, when the other master teachers around the elder heard his words, tears began brimming in their eyes. "Bro, if you don't want to be a celestial master teacher, you can pass the position down to us. We would be laughing even in our dreams if such an opportunity were to ever chance upon us. Really, is it all right for you to reject the heavens so directly? Aren't you pretty much making an enemy of the world?" Scram. While they were feeling deeply stifled by the happenings, the figure in the sky suddenly bellowed before kicking at the heavens, which had latched onto his leg. Hong Long. A rift appeared in the sky. He's indeed abandoning his position as a celestial master teacher. If there had still been any doubts previously, they had completely vanished without a trace. It was obvious that the towering figure no longer wanted to be a celestial master teacher, but the relentless heavens simply refused to back down and continued trying to suffuse the towering figure with their aura. Who in the world is that fellow? Unable to take it any longer, the elder leaned in to take a closer look. He wanted to know the identity of the man who was so heartlessly shattering their image of a celestial master teacher. For tens of thousands of years, there had been no master teacher who did not desire the acknowledgement of the heavens. Such a feat meant the resounding of their name through the ages and the continued inheritance of their lineage through thousands of generations. Yet, that fellow was trying to shake off the heavens as if they were pests on his hands, going to the extent of even stomping on the latter. "Will you die if you don't provoke us like that? Hula." It was at this moment that the towering figure in the sky turned around, revealing his appearance. He was a dashing young man in his early 20s with sharp eyebrows. "Isn't that Zhongxian? But I thought that he was dead." The elder was taken aback. The master-teacher pavilion had once issued an arrest warrant on the young man across the entire master-teacher continent, such that there was no master-teacher who did not know this name. Afterward, things had gotten worse, and eventually, the young man had ended his life at the master-teacher pavilion headquarters. A person who should have died 3 months ago, how could he possibly bounce back to life and even be a celestial master-teacher at that? What in the world had happened in between? It was as if the story had jumped from the prologue to the epilogue all of a sudden. The master teachers in the area were flabbergasted by this unexpected happening. The same scene was occurring in other master teacher pavilions across the world. Countless master teachers looked at the towering figure in the air with reddened eyes. Some were even crying miserably, exclaiming that they had lived in vain. It was way too much. For someone to reject even being a celestial master teacher. Could anyone be more arrogant than that? In the master teacher pavilion headquarters, a group of ancient sages and 9-star master teachers were gathered together in a stately room. "So, that's what happened," Yangsha said. "The otherworldly demonic tribe has almost been unified, so we can be certain that it no longer poses a threat to us. This means that it's time for our master teacher pavilion to shift its strategic goals and manpower deployment. We should devote more resources into imparting the wisdom of the predecessors and nurturing young talents." Yangsha, if I understand your words correctly, you are saying that not only did Zhongsha not betray mankind, he's even a celestial master teacher as well. The reason he ended his life at the master teacher pavilion headquarters was to use the incident as a cover to sneak into the otherworldly demonic tribe and resolve the threat once and for all, a 9-star master teacher asked with a deep frown on his forehead, seemingly unwilling to believe this tall tale. "Indeed." Yangsha nodded. "However, some of what I have shared so far is still conjecture on my part, so we'll need some further verification. Nevertheless, I'm 90% certain of the matter. As long as we can't fully verify the matter, there is a chance that your conjecture might fall through. With all due respect, Yangsha, I find it hard to believe your story. If Zhongshe is truly a celestial master teacher, he should have reported it to the master teacher pavilion. Why would he hide his identity? I don't deny that he has a way with imparting knowledge to others, but going to the extent of saying that he's a celestial master teacher seems a little too far-fetched to me. Indeed. All of us here are familiar with Kongshe's compassionate temperament and benevolent heart. I have browsed through Zhongshe's records, and I don't think that he has the character needed to be acknowledged by the heavens. Some master teachers posed their doubts. It was not that they were intentionally making things hard for Yangsha, but it had been tens of thousands of years since a celestial master teacher last appeared. Furthermore, the person who was said to be a celestial master teacher was someone who had a relationship with the spirit god. It was inevitable that there would be some doubtful naysayers. I'm afraid that you are mistaking my intention. I'm not opening this matter up for discussion, I am informing you of it. I'll permit you to discuss it among yourselves behind closed doors, but for the time being, we are going to proceed with this meeting under this premise, Yangsha replied sharply. The reason he had chosen to roam the world was because he did not like that the master-teacher pavilion had already strayed from its original intentions. He wanted to make use of this opportunity to correct things, but it was truly frustrating how he was facing obstacles every step of the way. He knew that there was no way to fully convince those master teachers, so he chose to take a more forceful approach. I'm willing to go on with the meeting under such a premise if that's what you wish, but I refuse to believe that he's a celestial master teacher. If even he's able to become a celestial master teacher, there's no reason the rest of us can't. One of the 9-star master teachers replied indignantly, but in the midst of his words, the ground suddenly began to tremble. Alarmed, the crowd quickly left the room to look outward, and they soon saw a familiar figure towering in the sky. A unique aura originating from the world was surging toward him, attempting to enter through his apertures and fill his body. Who else could that familiar figure possibly be other than Zhongshe, who had ended his life at the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters 3 months prior? That is, the aura bestowed by the predecessors during the acknowledgement ceremony. Find authorized novels in WebNovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. No, that's not the aura from our predecessors. It's the aura bestowed from the world on a celestial master teacher. As 9-star master teachers, they swiftly comprehended what was going on with just a glance. However, just because they were able to comprehend it did not mean that their minds were capable of processing it in a moment's time. That was a historic moment where an entire group of 9-star master teachers and ancient sages stood with slackened jaws and widened eyes. Just a moment earlier, some had claimed that there was no way that Zhongshe could be a celestial master teacher. It was as if the other party was carefully timing his actions in order to bring about the greatest face slap to them. Wait a moment. He doesn't seem to be accepting the acknowledgement at all. On the contrary, it seems like he's trying to free himself from that identity. It did not take long for someone to notice the anomaly. Now that you mention it, that does seem to be the case. Zhongshe seems to be trying to expel the celestial aura within his body. A celestial master teacher casting away the aura bestowed from the heavens? Is he out of his mind? The sheer preposterousness of what they were seeing had exceeded the limits of what they could rationally process. All they could do was shake their heads endlessly and murmur words of disapproval as they watched Zhongshe flinging out the aura from his body with a look of disgust on his face, as if he was purging his body of some repulsive poison. Even the heavens seemed to be a little taken aback by the situation. Such a thing had simply never happened before. Do you still think that he isn't a celestial master teacher? Zhongshe asked as he gulped down a mouthful of saliva. His senior was truly an extraordinary individual. Everything he did was able to leave one utterly shocked. Becoming a celestial master teacher was something that everyone desired, but he was so frantically trying to free himself from it such that it almost looked as if he was a heartless man trying to dump his girlfriend. The world was really going mad. He is a celestial master teacher. We were blind. Those 9-star master teachers who had doubted Zhongshe's words earlier felt a fiery pain on their cheeks. If there was a pit in the ground, they would have dived right in without a moment's hesitation. It was truly embarrassing how they had to swallow their words a moment after making such confident declarations. Sighing deeply at Zhongshe's actions, Zhongshe turned to the 9-star master teacher who had argued with him a moment ago. You said earlier that there's no reason why the rest of you can't be celestial master teachers if Zhongshe is one, right? Since he's going to shake away his identity right now, why don't you give it a try? Given all the miracles that his senior had produced, this bunch of people still dared to doubt his credentials as a celestial master teacher. If you think so highly of yourself, why don't you give it a try? The 9-star master teacher really burst into tears on the spot. Chapter 1867. Entering the barrier. While Zhongshe was relinquishing his title as a celestial master teacher by releasing the aura that he had absorbed in his 5 previous acknowledgements, a huge uproar erupted across the master teacher continent. Previously, when Zhongshe obtained the acknowledgement from the heavens, the phenomena that occurred had mostly been limited to the regional master teacher pavilions. In view of the severity of the issue, the master teacher pavilions had chosen to suppress the matter, so there were not many people who were aware of it. However, at that moment, nearly every single living being on the master teacher continent was witnessing the release and dissipation of the heavens aura back to the world with their own eyes. They would really have to be fools if they still did not get what was happening. It was not easy for another celestial master teacher to appear on the continent once more, But who would have thought that the other party would quit just like that? As expected of teacher. The reverence reflected in Zhong Jiuxiao's eyes was more than what any words could possibly bring out. Upon discovering his teacher's identity, he had not hesitated to become the latter's student. Yet, it turned out that his teacher did not even care about that identity at all, throwing it away without the slightest hesitation. As expected of someone who had already seen past the material world, things such as glory and honor were not even worth a gold coin to him. While the whole world was going into a frenzy due to the happenings, Zhong Xian was still sitting in front of the barrier, forcefully expelling the energy in his body. Unless he emptied out the aura that he had received from the previous celestial master teacher acknowledgements from his body, there was no way that he would be able to become the world's teacher. Jeji. Jeji. Even as the heavens exerted a pressure so great that it seemed as if his soul would be crushed to bits, Zhong Xian maintained a nonchalant look on his face. It was impossible to tell what was going through his mind. In truth, he harbored some doubts about relinquishing his celestial master teacher title as well. He knew of the significance of the title after all. However, when he came into contact with the barrier and inherited Kongsha's philosophy, he had become certain that this was the path that Kongsha had walked on as well. Otherwise, no matter how powerful or talented he might be, he would never be able to go any further than being an ancient sage in this world. It would be impossible for him to break the dimension barrier and ascend to a higher dimension. The recognition from the heavens of this world was both a blessing and a curse. It served to shackle one down to this world. If he wanted to free himself from his shackles, he would first have to relinquish his identity. Catcher. As the aura dissipated, the pressure coming from the heavens seemed to intensify, as if symbolizing the rage of the heavens at the blasphemous act. Ominous clouds swiftly rolled in together with devastating lightning and flames. Here it comes, Zhong Xian murmured as he rose to his feet. However, he remained within the underground hall, not leaving at all. He knew that if he left, the strength of the lightning tribulation would surely ravage the entire Tianqian kingdom, destroying every last soul within the perimeter of the tribulation. As long as he remained in the underground hall, the lightning tribulation would have to have no choice but to concentrate its prowess within the area. It was fortunate that the manor extended far and wide, so it was unlikely that any bystanders would be caught in the conflict. Huala. The cataclysmic lightning swiftly gathered in the sky and formed a massive saber with destructive flames and lightning crackling around it. Even the fabric of space seemed to be as feeble as a piece of paper in the face of the powerful saber, and it seemed as if everything would be eradicated in its face. This was the most fearsome trial of the ancient sage ordeal, the ordeal of lightning armament. Who would have thought that he would face it once more there? Su. The lightning saber surged right down toward the underground hall, appearing right above Zhong Xian's head in the blink of an eye. Tz La. The formations around the manor and the underground hall were decisively sliced in two as if they were mere tattered pieces of cloth. Heh. I've been waiting for you. Taking a deep breath, Zhong Xian's fist shot right up to strike down the lightning saber. The previous time he faced the ordeal of lightning armament, he had been far too weak to be able to withstand its might. However, he was no longer as helpless as he used to be. Even without using the Dragonbone Divine Spear, the might that he exerted would allow him to take down any blood reincarnation realm expert. Boom! As the fist and the lightning saber clashed, Zhong Xian found himself knocked several steps back. This momentary clash had left his fist marred with slightly charred flesh and boiling blood. It seemed like despite the massive increase in his cultivation, his strength was still not up to par with the ordeal of lightning armament. The last time he underwent it, he had needed to summon little tribulation and further augment it by summoning hundreds of cultivation ordeals all at once before it was a match for the ordeal of lightning armament. However, in the Tianqian royal city, there was no way he would be able to do what he had done previously. Nevertheless, that did not mean that he was going to go down without a fight. Zhong Xian flitted over to the side of the barrier before turning to face the massive saber once more. Driving his zhunqi to the maximum, he punched in the direction of the massive saber, which threatened to scorch every inch of his body with the blazing heat it was emanating. Once again, the collision ended with Zhong Xian's defeat as his body was knocked back from the saber, causing a series of energy ripples to traverse across the barrier. On the other hand, the massive saber continued to descend with formidable might, striking right down upon the barrier. Whang! There was a light buzz as the massive saber inflicted its black flames onto the barrier, causing a small hole to corrode on it. However, the black flames only lasted for a brief moment before they were extinguished by the tremendous energy rippling through the barrier. It's working. Zhongxian's eyes lit up. Part of the reason for him choosing to cultivate and summon the lightning tribulation there was because he wanted to use the power of the lightning tribulation to deal with the barrier. Considering how the barrier was able to withstand both his and Vicious strength, it was unfeasible to attempt to break it with their strength. Furthermore, even though the barrier had been left behind by Kongsha, it did not seem like it would open up solely on the merit that he was a celestial master teacher. Since that was the case, he had no choice but to tap into external forces to breach the barrier. Opening his fist into a palm, he struck at the massive saber once more. Catcher! Catcher! The massive saber retaliated with ferocious slashes time and time again, but most of the energy coming from its attacks was halted by the barrier right behind him. Under the relentless attacks of the saber, cracks began to appear on the surface of the barrier. However, due to the multiple clashes with the saber, Zhongxian's body also sustained significant damage. Just like when he had faced the ordeal of lightning armament before, he was already on the verge of collapse. Canvas of 4 seasons. With a thought, Zhongxian swapped into the appearance of Sovereign Chen Ling with the disguise amulet before taking out the canvas of 4 seasons to release the energy that he had sealed within it. He had stolen this energy from the deity whom Sovereign Chen Ling had summoned, and it was exceptionally effective in healing injuries. It took a few moments before Zhongxian fully recovered from his injuries. After he was all healed up, he turned his sights to the massive saber and continued his attacks once more. Boom! 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 The massive saber continued striking down on the barrier, causing the cracks that had appeared to grow larger and larger, seemingly on the verge of being torn apart at any moment. By this point, the ordeal of lightning armament had already expended a large portion of its energy, making it much weaker than before. It seems like it's indeed possible to grind it down. Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. The risk had paid off. Even though he was not the world's teacher yet, it seemed like he would be able to free himself from his position as a celestial master teacher, allowing his cultivation to rise once more. At the same time, he would probably be able to shatter whatever was left of the barrier. He had no idea what lay on the other side, but considering the secrecy surrounding it, he had a feeling that the 100 schools of philosophers might have something to do with it. Even if the 100 schools of philosophers was not involved, it was bound to have something to do with Kongsha. As long as he traced Kongsha's footsteps, he would eventually be able to ascend to a higher dimension. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Catcher! Catcher! As the ordeal of lightning armament struck down another 2 more times, the cracks grew larger and larger, to the extent that they were already large enough for a person to pass through. At the same time, the ominous clouds in the sky were starting to dissipate. Another few breaths passed, and it seemed like the ordeal of lightning armament had finally reached its limits. The multitude of attacks that it had launched had completely sapped its energy. With a light tap of Zhongxian's finger, it dissipated into countless strands of energy. Let's enter. Finally overcoming the lightning tribulation, Zhongxian beckoned the others before diving right into the hole in the barrier. Zhengyang and Wei Ruyan nodded. They swiftly sent a message to Zhao Ya before following their teacher to the other side of the barrier. Chapter 1868 Greensprout Wei. What appeared before Zhongxian was a vast world. The blue sky, dabbled with traces of white clouds, extended far and wide. Greenery flourished from the earth, creating a peaceful scene that went well with the melodious chirping of birds. The spiritual energy in the air was so concentrated that it was on par with the most blessed land back at the master-teacher continent. Not too far away from where Zhongxian was standing, there was a farmland filled with wheat. Where are we? Wei Ruyan asked with a confused frown as she slowly walked out from the darkness. She drove her zhenqi carefully for fear that there would be danger lurking in the area. It's probably some sort of ancient domain, Zheng Yang replied. Zhongxian carefully assessed his surroundings as he slowly proceeded over to the farmland. He bent down before one of the wheat plants and plucked it out in order to conduct a closer examination. A moment later, he chuckled softly and asked, "Have you noticed?" "Noticed?" The two youths replied in bewilderment to Zhongxian's abrupt question. Zheng Yang walked closer to take a closer look at the wheat stalk in Zhongxian's hand before remarking, "The wheat over here seems to be much bulkier than what we can find in the master-teacher continent. It seems to retain more spiritual energy from the surroundings too." "You're right. The wheat here seems to be infused with much more spiritual energy." Wei Ruyan nodded with a slightly confused look still on her face. She could not understand why her teacher was more interested in a stalk of wheat than figuring out where they were and what they should do. As ancient sages, they could continue living without any problems even if they went without food. As such, agriculture produce and the like no longer caught their attention. This is green sprout wheat. Due to the high concentration of spiritual energy it contains, an ordinary human will be able to enhance their constitution if they consume it for a long period. Take your innate poison body for example. If you had consumed the green sprout wheat from a young age, you wouldn't have had to go through so much pain. Instead, you would have easily awakened your unique constitutions. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. It was the potency of Wei Ruyan's innate poison body, to the extent that she was unable to awaken or control it, that caused a huge strain on her body, resulting in her constant feeble condition back when she was younger. If not for her father, Wei Changfeng, going to great lengths to find all sorts of treasures to sustain her life, there was no way she would have survived long enough to meet Zhongxian. If she had eaten this green sprout wheat from a young age, her constitution would have been strengthened significantly, allowing her to better cope with her unique constitutions. Perhaps she would have been spared from much suffering, and Wei Changfeng would not have lost his life over a single stalk of a medicinal herb. If this green sprout wheat is that formidable, wouldn't it be a blessing to mankind if we could bring it back to the master-teacher continent and cultivate it? Zheng Yang's eyes lit up in excitement. As the head of the Combat Master Hall, he had to constantly push himself to think of issues from a higher perspective. There were also medicinal herbs on the master-teacher continent that could enhance one's constitution, but those medicinal herbs could not be cultivated on a large scale due to the stringent conditions required for their survival. On the other hand, the fact that the green sprout wheat was growing in large fields meant that it was possible to cultivate it on a large scale. If they could enhance the constitution of mankind as a whole, there was no doubt that it would be a huge blessing to mankind. The reason mankind had been unable to claim the absolute advantage in the battle against the otherworldly demonic tribe despite the efforts of countless master teachers was because the starting point of the otherworldly demons were simply too far ahead of their human counterparts. Even the otherworldly demons with the weakest bloodlines were bestowed with the strength of a transcendent mortal from birth. This difference in the starting points created a gap that was nigh impossible to bridge with effort alone. In fact, it could already be said to be a miraculous feat that mankind had been able to survive for so many years in the face of the otherworldly demonic tribe's aggression. Knowing what Zheng Yang was thinking of, Zhongxian replied with a shake of his head. It's impossible to cultivate the green sprout wheat on the master-teacher continent. The existence of this plant was not detailed in the records of the master-teacher pavilion. Instead, he found it amid the knowledge from the mountain of books in the Temple of Confucius. This was a plant that Kongshe had conceptualized in accordance to his vision, and it should have been non-existent in their world. Zhongxian had to verify time and time again before he could be certain that the plant that he was holding was indeed the green sprout wheat. Why not? Zheng Yang asked with incomprehension. It was true that the spiritual energy there was considerably more concentrated than that on the master-teacher continent, but given their capabilities, it should be possible for them to create large enclosed spaces that emulated that environment. Why would it be impossible for them to cultivate it on the master-teacher continent? In the many years of battle with the otherworldly demonic tribe, the atmosphere of the master-teacher continent has already become suffused with their killing intent, albeit in nearly undetectable amounts to us. Unfortunately, the green sprout wheat is exceptionally vulnerable to killing intent, such that even the slightest contact with killing intent can lead to its death. As Zhongxian explained, he tapped his finger lightly and infused the field before him with a surge of zhenqi harnessing a slight hint of killing intent. Hula. As if a droplet of ink falling in the midst of clear water, the green sprout wheat within an area of 10 mu from his fingers turned yellow and fell limp in an instant. It was almost as if someone had set the crops in the entire area ablaze. This. Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan were surprised. Even Zhongxian was slightly taken aback by how sensitive the green sprout wheat was. While he had known that green sprout wheats were exceptionally vulnerable to killing intent, he did not think that they would be so weak to it. He had controlled the killing intent in that surge of zhenqi to an extremely minute amount, but it had still ended up afflicting such devastation upon the field. As such, there was no way that those plants could possibly survive on the Master-Teacher continent. There are quite a few otherworldly demons hidden on the Master-Teacher continent, causing there to be a slight concentration of killing intent in the air. While it's negligible and perhaps even imperceptible to most humans, it's more than enough to spell a catastrophe to the green sprout wheat, Zhongxian remarked. Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan nodded in agreement. The lands of the Qianxian kingdom aren't plagued with killing intent, right? So, shouldn't it be possible for us to cultivate the green sprout wheat there? Wei Ruyan asked. She had noticed as soon as she entered the Qianxian kingdom that there was a natural barrier in the ancient domain that seemed to prevent the killing intent lingering in the atmosphere from corroding its lands. In other words, this ancient domain was devoid of killing intent. You're right to say that there isn't any killing intent in the Qianxian kingdom, but it's a pity that its spiritual energy is simply insufficient. Furthermore, haven't you noticed that there isn't the unique aura that allows one to advance as a master teacher there? Zhongxian replied. This. Wei Ruyan pondered for a moment before nodding slowly in response. She had not paid particular attention to the matter since it did not affect her as a poison master. However, that did seem to be the case. There was no killing intent in the Qianxian kingdom, but the conditions required for master teachers to advance to higher ranks were also absent. As such, one who wanted to be a master teacher had no choice but to depart from the Qianxian kingdom and head elsewhere. Even Lu Zun, whom they had met earlier, had become a 2-star master teacher because he had migrated to other kingdoms. Ancient domains are barren places, devoid of any auras and poor in spiritual energy. While killing intent is completely absent in this area, its climate is still unsuitable for the growth of the green sprout wheat. Even if the green sprout wheat is able to survive in the Qianxian kingdom, it won't be able to germinate and grow. Zhongxian replied with a sigh. It was after he forsook his celestial master teacher title that he gained a clearer view of the Qianxian kingdom. With just a glance, he was able to see right into the crux. He was still unable to figure the reason behind the anomalies present in ancient domains, but he was certain that the green sprout wheat would be unable to thrive there. Otherwise, Kong Shi would have turned the ancient domains into the core of the master teacher continent. Even though the green sprout wheat won't grow in ancient domains, it seems to be flourishing well here. Just what kind of place have we entered? Zheng Yang wondered in curiosity. For something that wouldn't survive anywhere else to actually thrive in this land, could there be something special here? Zhongxian pondered for a moment before replying. If I'm not mistaken, this is probably the Kungsu domain where the 100 schools of philosophers reside. This area is unlike any of the other folded spaces we have entered. Instead, it has already developed to become a brand new world. The 100 schools of philosophers? Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan widened their eyes in astonishment. Woo! Just as they were about to ask further about the matter, the sound of a horn suddenly echoed from afar. Following which, a large group of people suddenly rushed over with wrathful looks on their faces. Chapter 1869 Village Bell. This group of people were dressed in ordinary-looking shirts with short sleeves. Their hands were equipped with hoes, machetes, spades, and all kinds of farming tools, and they seemed to be ready to wage a war. Their cultivation realms. Zheng Yang muttered with widened eyes. The group of people before them were ordinary civilians who could not have appeared more normal. Their counterparts on the master-teacher continent would not even be fighters. Yet, Every single one of them was actually at Zhongsha realm. They haven't cultivated at all. There's no trace of zhenqi in their bodies. Wei Ruyan was also taken aback. From the heavy footsteps of this group of people, she could tell that there was no zhenqi in their dantians. Without a doubt, none of them were cultivators. Despite never absorbing spiritual energy and refining it into zhenqi, they were already emanating the aura of Zhongsha realm cultivators. This is likely the effects of consuming greensprout wheat for extended periods of time, resulting in some development in their constitution, Zhongxian explained. They are no longer ordinary humans. Such a situation was probably related to the greensprout wheat. Their genes had been refined by the greensprout wheat over many generations, causing a fundamental change in their constitution. As a result of these changes, they had been born with strength superior to other humans at birth, much like the otherworldly demons. Zheng Yang's eyes lit up in excitement. He was already moved by the idea when he heard his teacher's words, but seeing the miraculous effects of the greensprout wheat in action, he felt as if he saw endless possibilities for the advancement of mankind. If everyone on the master-teacher continent became like this group of people, they would really be able to stand up against the otherworldly demonic tribe fearlessly even if something went wrong. While one starting point was not everything, there was no denying that it played a significant role in deciding how high one would be able to reach in the future. Without a doubt, being born with strength comparable to Zhongsha realm cultivators would be a huge boost. This was really a step closer in achieving Kongsha's ideal of creating a prosperous and powerful society for mankind. Who in the world are you? How dare you destroy our crops? The encircling crowd slowly marched up to Zhongxian as they bellowed furiously. The one leading the group of men was an elder who appeared to be 80 years old. Despite his advanced age, he was brimming with energy. His hair and beard were still dyed a youthful black, and his movements were vigorous. Even though he had not cultivated, his cultivation had reached the highest level beneath transcendent mortal, Jizuan realm. Jizuan realm experts were able to snub even Emperor Shenzui from the Tianqian kingdom, but those villagers were able to reach that level just by aging. This was something that no one would believe possible outside. I apologize for my careless action. I didn't mean to ruin your crops. I'm willing to compensate you for them, Zhongxian said apologetically as he took out a pile of medicinal herbs and weapons. While they were already the least expensive goods in his storage ring, they were still commodities that would fetch a relatively high price anywhere else. Seeing such a sight, the crowd who had marched over here with gusto suddenly halted. They were unable to accurately identify the value of the artifacts before them, but they were still able to feel the incredible spiritual energy gushing out from them. The reason they had dashed there was because they had found that intruders had damaged several mu of their farmland, but even the ruined wheat could not begin to compare to the treasures laid out before their eyes. You are going to give those to us as compensation? The elder dared not believe what was happening. That's right, Zhongxian replied with a smile. Please feel free to take them. To be honest, I have some questions that I hope you will be able to answer. The elder quickly instructed the villagers to inspect the treasures, and after confirming that they were invaluable artifacts, he could not help but feel a little giddy. He hurriedly shook his head to snap out of his state and said, "What is it? Ask anything you like." Given that the other party had spoken to them humbly and given them such generous compensation, there was no way that he could stay angry at them. It's actually the first time that the three of us have come here, so may I ask where we are? Zhongxian asked. You are in our stone village, which is located within the territories of the Estate of Edification, the elder replied. Stone village? Estate of Edification? Zhongxian frowned. Pardon me, but what is the Estate of Edification? The villagers were confused by the question, but a middle-aged man suddenly spoke up. It's one of the areas of jurisdiction under the lineage of ancient sage Zikai. Ancient sage Zikai. Zhongxian nodded slowly in realization. Ancient sage Zikai was one of the 72 sages under Kongsha's lineage. While his reputation paled far in comparison to Ran Qiu, Bo Shong, and the others, his name had still appeared frequently back in Kongsha's era. Ancient sage Zikai was known to be skilled in agriculture. Perhaps, while the idea of the greensprout wheat was conceptualized by Kongsha, He was the one who had carefully cultured it. Since this area was under the jurisdiction of ancient sage Zikai, it meant to say that they were within the territories of the 100 schools of philosophers. He had still been thinking of conducting a thorough investigation after arriving at the Qianqian kingdom, but who could have known that Zheng Yang and the others would stumble upon it so swiftly? May I know where I should go in order to reach ancient sage Zikai's residence? Given that tens of thousands of years had passed then, ancient sage Zikai himself was bound to have already passed away. Nevertheless, he should still have descendants living in the area. If he wished to trace Kong Shi's footsteps and uncover what he did and where he went after capturing a deity, he would have to first find the experts of the 100 schools of philosophers. The residence of the ancient sage is located in Fan City. It's quite far away from here though. If you are in no rush, why don't I have Xiao Yu from our village to take you there? The elder asked. Xiao Yu is our village belle. She is a cultivator, and she has a spirit beast under her command. If you were to ride her spirit beast, you should be able to get to Fan City faster. Village belle? Zhong Xian shook his head politely. It's fine. That would be imposing too much on you. It'll be fine as long as you point out the direction of Fan City to me. No, you aren't imposing on us at all. It's our pleasure to be of assistance to you. Fan City is a major city, and not just anyone can enter it. If you attempt to go in despite not being a local, it's very likely that you'll be arrested and interrogated. It'll be much safer for you to have Xiao Yu lead you there. She's more familiar with the area, and it'll be more convenient for you to move around with her by your side, the elder replied affirmatively, not leaving any room for rebuttal at all. It was true that the group before him had destroyed their farmland, but they had willingly offered generous compensation while maintaining a polite attitude. Naturally, they would welcome them with hospitality. Seeing that the elder was adamant on the matter, Zhong Xian could only hesitantly nod in agreement. The stone village was not a large village. All in all, there were only around 100 households. When they heard that there were guests, they swiftly rushed out of their houses to welcome them warmly. Soon, the rumored village belle appeared as well. She was not a top-notch beauty, but her looks were decent and pleasing to the eye. In a small village like this, it was understandable that she would be considered the village belle. As the village belle walked over, Zheng Yang looked at her and murmured beneath his breath, "Transcendent Tu Dan." Just as the elder had said earlier, she was a cultivator. Through the zhanqi flowing through her body, it was not too difficult to see that her cultivation was at transcendent mortal Tu Dan. Xiao Yu walked up to Zhong Xian and the others and spoke haughtily with raised eyebrows. "I can take to Fan City, but I would like to remind you that the residence of ancient sage Zikai is not a place where anyone can come and go as they please. You'll have to submit your name scrolls in advance if you wish to pay a visit. Know that if you make any trouble such as rudely barging into the residence and offending those living there, I'm not going to save you." As the village belle, she had her own pride and dignity. "Rest assured, we don't intend to stir any trouble," Zhong Xian replied. While their cultivation had pretty much reached the pinnacle of this world, the reason for them visiting the Kungsu domain was not to start a fight but to uncover answers. Naturally, there was no reason for them to intentionally get into conflicts with others. That would be for the best. Also, I'll just put this out here in case you misunderstand anything. It's due to the village chief's instruction that I'm leading you to Fan City. If I had a choice, I would never accept something as troublesome with this. So, don't bother thinking that you will get together with me or anything just because we are journeying together. I'll only accept the confessions of someone from the village. I have no plans of marrying into any other villages at the moment," Xiao Yu said sternly. Constipated looks appeared on the faces of Zhong Xian and Zheng Yang. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Chapter 1870 Bidding farewell. The beast that Xiao Yu had tamed was an eaglebeak beast. It boasted a massive physique, such that it was not cramped even with so many people sitting on its back. Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan had been thinking of flying over to the destination on their own, which would have made a much faster journey, but recalling their teacher's low-profile personality, They eventually abandoned the thought and sat down quietly on the back of the beast. Seeing the group of 3 controlling their breathing, Xiao Yu asked with a doubtful look in her eyes, "You are cultivators too?" She had thought that the group before her were no different from the villagers, ordinary humans devoid of zhenqi. Who knew that they would be able to absorb spiritual energy? "You can say so," Zheng Yang replied with a smile. Xiao Yu heaved a sigh of relief before continuing on with a prideful smile. "Not bad. Just to let you know, I have also cultivated before. Of everyone in the village, I am the only one who has cleared the examination and inherited the true heritage of the old village chief." "Not bad," Zheng Yang remarked nonchalantly. Find authorized novels in webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. You might not be aware of this, but the old village chief is someone who has inherited ancient sage Zikai's lineage, Xiao Yu said. Oh. Zhongxian shot a curious glance over. The old village chief went to Fan City in his earlier years and received the guidance of the experts there. Even though he has aged since then, he's still the strongest individual in the village. It's a pity that you didn't meet him, or else you would surely be filled with admiration for him, just like me, Xiao Yu explained. They had only met the incumbent village chief so far, but the strongest person in their village was actually the old village chief. It was because she had cultivated with the old village chief that she had managed to achieve such accomplishments to date. "May I know what cultivation technique you practice? Were you taught by a master teacher?" Zhongxian asked out of curiosity. The heritage left behind by ancient sage Zikai could not possibly be anything ordinary. Even if Xiao Yu had only come into contact with a small sliver of it, he should still be able to tell something about it. "Master teacher?" Xiao Yu frowned in confusion. It seemed to be a foreign term to her. "It's an occupation that specializes in imparting knowledge and clarifying the doubts of others," Zhongxian said. "I have never heard of it before." Xiao Yu shook her head. "Aren't cultivation techniques all family heirlooms that can't be leaked to outsiders? Why would anyone ever impart it to an outsider? Other than in the great frontistery of Confucianism, there shouldn't be any place where anyone would impart cultivation techniques to outsiders. In any case, I have never heard of a master teacher before." After asking a few more questions, Zhongxian finally came to a realization. There was no master-teacher pavilion in the 100 schools of philosophers. If one wanted to cultivate, one needed to inherit the heritage from their clan or earn the right to enter the great frontistery of Confucianism. The great frontistery of Confucianism was not too different from the academies on the master-teacher continent. However, the requirements to enter were extremely harsh, such that only the most talented of individuals were accepted. Even the village belle before them was unlikely to stand a chance. The members from the 100 schools of philosophers whom he had met previously, Shui Yang, Nangong Feng, and the others, were all experts from the great frontistery of Confucianism. "Are you trying to seek new opportunities in Fan City? Let me tell you, it isn't as simple as that. I've been there a few times, but I still haven't had a chance to meet any experts yet," Xiao Yu said as he looked at Zhongxian and the others with a look of pity in her eyes. Cultivation techniques were the bare necessity required for one to cultivate, but cultivation techniques were exclusive. They were not readily available just because someone wanted one. The only reason that she had managed to become a cultivator was due to her innate talent and a bunch of coincidences working in her favor. When she realized that the 3 of them were just trying their luck, her attitude toward them swiftly became cold. As such, the rest of the journey ended up in silence. Roughly 2 hours later, a massive city came into sight. They had arrived at Fan City. The village belle had described it as an incredible city of massive proportions, but having witnessed the grandeur of the master-teacher continent, Zhongxian and the others could not help but shake their heads in disappointment. In terms of size, Fan City was nothing in comparison to the Zhong clan's Dracotiga City or the master-teacher pavilion headquarters. At the very most, it could only be said to be at the level of Tianxian Royal City. There was an inspection at the entrance, but the group managed to enter the city without any hiccups. They walked down the streets before finally stopping before a massive residence. Xiao Yu pointed to the residence and said, "This is ancient sage Zikai's residence." There are plenty of people who knock on the doors in hope of a fortuitous encounter. Look over there, those are the people who wish to learn their arts. However, it's a pity that they are dreaming of the impossible. No matter how long they camp out here, they won't receive anything. Looking at the outer perimeters of the residence, there was a large group of people kneeling all around. From young children to teenage youths, the kneeling group were dressed in different attires, which hinted that they had come from far and wide. However, one thing they had in common was the determined glint in their eyes. There were some of them who had kneeled for so long that their bodies were shaking non-stop. They were already approaching their limits, but they gritted their teeth and forced themselves to persevere. Seeing such a sight, a frown crept onto Zhong Xian's forehead. There were so many people who desired knowledge and would go to great lengths to it, but the massive gates of the residence still remained unforgivingly sealed. It was as if their prayers would never be answered. Kongsha preached the right to education. Considering that the entire 100 school of philosophers are his students, why are they so unwilling to pass down their cultivation techniques? Zhong Xian could not understand what he was seeing. It was due to Kongsha's magnanimity that he had eventually become the world's teacher. Since the lineage of the 100 schools of philosophers originated directly from Kongsha, why would they maintain such tight control over their heritage, refusing to share it with others? Jia. While Zhong Xian was still wondering about this matter, the massive gates to the residence suddenly opened, and several tall, slender figures walked out. They were 3 youths and a middle-aged man. The youths seemed to be barely in their 20s, whereas the middle-aged man had his brows sternly furrowed. A great sage cultivator, Zheng Yang murmured. The middle-aged man was actually a great sage cultivator, whereas the 3 youths were at St. Nine Dan. Without a doubt, all 4 of them were highly talented geniuses. The examination of the great frontispiece of Confucianism is fraught with difficulties. Take my teachings to heart, and do your best to clear it, the middle-aged man instructed the 3 youths in front of him. Yes. The 3 of them nodded solemnly in response. The great frontispiece of Confucianism? Zhong Xian's eyebrows shot up upon hearing that familiar term. That's the current head of the Fan clan and his juniors. Are they going to the great frontispiece of Confucianism to challenge the trial? That's incredible. Those who are permitted to step through the doorways of the great frontispiece of Confucianism are the most talented of geniuses. If I could receive even just a single pointer from a person of that caliber, all my effort wouldn't have been in vain. It's a pity that their cultivation techniques aren't imparted to outsiders. Given our standing, there's no way we will ever be able to lay our hands on them. Such discussions could be heard amid the crowd. Ancient Sage Zikai was an honorary title. His real name was Fan Shu. The Fan clan whom the crowd were speaking about referred to the clan of his descendants. Good. I wish you all the best, the middle-aged man said with a wave of his hand. Who? The 3 youths soared into the air and flitted into the distance. All it took was a few moments for them to vanish without a trace. Watching as the silhouettes of the 3 youths vanished, Zheng Yang turned to look at Zhong Xian anxiously. Teacher. Yuan, let's follow them. I think the great frontispiece of Confucianism holds the key to all of the secrets we have been wondering so far, Zhong Xian said. Previously, the experts who had snuck into the master-teacher continent had all been from the 100 schools of philosophers. Instead of posing questions to the not-too-beautiful village belle, it would be much better to them to simply follow those 3 youths. Hearing their words, the village belle scoffed. Follow them? Have you eaten the wrong medicine? They are saint experts. Given the speed that they are traveling at, even if my spirit beast snapped its wings, it would still be unable to catch up with them. You won't be able to even see their silhouettes. She also desired to learn from the 3 youths, but they simply were not even close to being at the same level as those 3 youths. Putting aside seeking guidance from them, they would not be able to reach them even if they ran with all of their might. It was not as if she could not understand Zhong Xian and the others' agitation at seeing the 3 experts, but they should be realistic. They would never achieve anything great with their heads in the air. Thank you for bringing us here. We won't be riding your aerial spirit beast back. Farewell. Interrupting Xiao Ayu's words, Zhong Xian clasped his fist with a smile before turning around. Who? He rose into the air, and as if teleporting through space, he abruptly disappeared into thin air. You! The eyes of the village belle nearly popped out of their sockets upon seeing Zhong Xian's vanishing act. She quickly turned to look at Jing Yang and Wei Ruyan, only to see the two of them smiling at her. Who? They vanished as well. Putong. Xiao Yu's bottom fell to the ground as she sat in a daze over what had just happened, dumbstruck. She had thought that they were weaklings, but contrary to her expectations, they turned out to be experts, top-notch experts who far surpassed her imagination. Chapter 1871. Fan Xiaoshu, paying no heed to the frenzied village belle, Zhong Xian and the others hastened their footsteps. It did not take them long to catch up to the three young men. While those three youths were not able to sever space to travel through dimension rifts, they seemed to have practiced some kind of unique movement art, allowing them to travel at an incredible speed. Shall we stop and question them? Zheng Yang asked. There's no need for that. Even if we question them, I reckon it's unlikely that they will be able to answer my doubts. It'll do for us to just follow them for the time being. Everything should come to light at the great frontistery of Confucianism, Zhong Xian replied with a shake of his head. The information that Zhong Xian wanted to know was one of the deepest secrets of the master-teacher continent, such that there was no way the youths from the younger generation would know a thing. Furthermore, revealing their goals might not necessarily work to their advantage. As such, it would be best for them to trail the youths for the time being and decide on their next move after they reached the great frontistery of Confucianism. Trusting his teacher's judgment, Zheng Yang nodded before falling silent. The group continued heading forward, and 3 days later, they finally found themselves standing before a humongous mountain. The area in front of the mountain was filled with huge crowds that numbered in the thousands. Zheng Yang discreetly landed on the ground and blended into the crowd to gather some information, whereas Zhong Xian and Wei Ruyan took this opportunity to swiftly assess their surroundings. None of those amid the crowd of several thousand around them were older than 30. All of their cultivation levels were similar to those the three youths from before, Saint Nine Dan. In fact, there were some who had reached half-great sage. Other than Zheng Yang and the others, there was probably no one else on the master-teacher continent who had reached Saint Nine Dan before their 30s. Yet, for so many of them to appear there all at once. As expected of the 100 schools of philosophers, they were indeed extraordinary. They possess the bloodlines of ancient sages, their constitutions have been refined by the green sprout wheat over generations, and they have inherited the entirety of Kongsha's heritage. Given so, it's difficult for the youths of the master-teacher continent to compete with them, Zhong Xian thought. There were plenty of geniuses on the master-teacher continent, but even among the three great clans, most of those who were at Saint Nine Dan were already in their 200s, and they were already esteemed elders in their own clans. It was spectacular for one to wield such great strength despite only being in their 20s. Teacher, I sense a particularly sharp aura from them. Wei Ruyan sent a telepathic message to Zhong Xian. It's as if they've been through countless battles. It's something that I rarely sense even from the experts of the master-teacher continent. Hearing those words, Zhong Xian nodded in response. This particular quality of those several thousand youths had caught his eye as well. Most of the experts on the master-teacher continent were master-teachers. While they boasted remarkable fighting prowess, they were more skilled in imparting knowledge and guiding the later generations. On the other hand, the cultivators who had gathered in front of the mountain emanated the feral aura of the battlefield right from their bones, reminiscent of combat masters. It was apparent that they had not just focused solely on their cultivation. They had also fought many battles, granting them a deep understanding of fighting techniques. Find authorized novels in Webnovel faster updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Sometime later, Zheng Yang returned and reported back to Zhong Xian telepathically. Teacher, based on what I've heard, the great frontistery of Confucianism isn't here. Instead, it's hidden within a folded space. If we wish to enter the great frontistery of Confucianism, we'll have to first join their ranks. Apparently, all of the people here are all the descendants of the 72 sages, and they are here to take the examination. I see. Zhongxian nodded contemplatively. The examinees have to clear many trials in order to enter the peculiar folded space where the great frontistery of Confucianism is located. Otherwise, the barrier will repel them, denying them entry, Zhang Yang explained. Hearing those words, Zhongxian activated the Eye of Insight to scan the surroundings, hoping to find the whereabouts of the great frontistery of Confucianism. However, he soon shook his head. He did find formations in the area around them, but there were no folded spaces or the like to be found. It seemed like he would not be able to sneak into the great frontistery of Confucianism that easily. Do I have to impersonate an examinee to participate in the examination as well? Zhongxian thought in exasperation. He was someone who wielded fighting prowess invincible beneath the dimension Shatterer realm. Even the powerful ancient sage Yang Qing would be no match for the current him. Yet, he was actually going to have to disguise himself as an ordinary examinee and compete with a bunch of Saint Nine Dan and half-transcendent mortal cultivators. Just the notion of it felt extremely embarrassing. It was as if he was an adult marching into a playground to challenge the kids playing there. However, if he did not do that, it would be difficult for him to get to the great frontistery of Confucianism. He had no idea about its whereabouts or how powerful the barrier around it was, so forceful methods might not work out too well. Even with his current cultivation, he dared not make a move recklessly when it came to matters relating to Kongsha's heritage. The barrier that he had to cross in order to enter this dimension was one good example. If the great frontistery of Confucianism had something of the same caliber as well, he could very well find himself cornered even if he had vicious aid. Zhongxian pondered for a moment before turning to instruct his two students. The great frontistery of Confucianism is likely to be fraught with dangers, and your disguises aren't perfect. For the time being, you should find a place in the vicinity and stay there till I contact you. The disguise amulet that Luo Ruoxin had given him would alter even his bloodline, making it impossible to discern any anomalies. With that, he should be able to impersonate one of the examinees without any issue. On the other hand, while Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan were able to alter their appearances, they were not able to disguise their fundamentals. Under the inspection of another ancient sage, they would be exposed in an instant. Since that was the case, it would be wiser for them to stay put. Yes, teacher. Knowing their teacher's capabilities, the two of them nodded in response. They swiftly drafted out a plan before Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan walked away with smiles on their faces. Without much trouble, they managed to lure the other two youths of the Fan clan away before Zhongxian approached the last youth with a bright smile on his face. Fan Xiaoshu, it's a pleasure to meet you. After following these three youths for the past 3 days, he was already well aware of their backgrounds. The youth standing before him was Fan Xiaoshu, and he was also the one deemed most likely to clear the examination and enter the great frontistery of Confucianism. You are. Even though Fan Xiaoshu was a descendant of ancient sage Zikai, there was no way that he could have noticed Zhongxian and the others' presence given the difference in their strength. As such, he was perplexed to see that Zhongxian actually knew his name. I'm aware that you may not know me, but your father is a close friend of mine. He has entrusted me to take care of you, so I would like to have a private talk with you about the upcoming examination, Zhongxian said. You are a close friend of my father's? A hint of doubt surfaced in Fan Xiaoshu's eyes. His father was the incumbent head of the Fan clan, the middle-aged man who had sent them off 3 days ago. If his father had any friends here, his father would have told him about it in advance. There was no way that he would not have been unaware of it. Indeed. There are too many people here at the moment, so shall we move to the side? Zhongxian could sense that Fan Xiaoshu was skeptical of his identity, but he maintained a nonchalant look on his face. All right then. Fan Xiaoshu was filled with doubt, but he eventually gave a nod of approval. Putting aside the fact that he was a Saint Nine Dan pinnacle expert, just the fact that they were surrounded by formidable experts made it highly unlikely for anyone to make a move on him directly even if that person did harbor malicious intentions toward him. Besides, he was just a humble nobody. There was nothing one could get out of him. They walked over to the back of a nearby building. Fan Xiaoshu was just about to inquire about the reason behind this talk when he saw the other party's palm expanding right before his eyes. Struck directly in the face, he fainted in an instant. Right up to the moment that he fainted, he was astonished that someone actually dared to make a move on him at a place like that. Zhong Xian placed Fan Xiaoshu's body into his folded space before using the disguise amulet to alter his appearance in the form of Fan Xiaoshu. He made sure that even their clothes were identical. While it had not been too long since he had come to this dimension, he had already grasped some rules regarding the culture there. Only those who belonged to the clans of the 72 sages were allowed to cultivate. Ordinary civilians were not allowed to access any cultivation techniques at all. He would not be allowed to take the examination if he disguised himself as a normal cultivator, so he could only wrong this fellow. Then again, this could be an opportunity for the other party. At the very least, the other party was sure to clear the examination without any hiccups. It was a golden ticket that guaranteed that he would get into the great frontistery of Confucianism. Zhong Xian quickly returned to where he had taken Fan Xiaoshu from earlier. Soon, he saw Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan returning with the two youths that they had lured away. The two youths had confused looks on their faces, apparently not understanding why they had been pulled away at all. Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan made up some excuse about recognizing the wrong people before taking their leave, leaving those two dumbfounded on the spot. Not too long later, several tall figures flitted over from afar, and a heavy pressure crushed down on them. The experts from the great frontistery of Confucianism had arrived. Chapter 1872. The topic of the examination. Zhong Xian looked at the tall figures floating in the sky with slightly raised eyebrows. Surprisingly, there were two familiar faces among the group. They were Nangong Yuanfeng and Tantai Zhenqing, who had paid a visit to the Luo clan and Zhong clan respectively not too long ago. In order to preserve their lifespan, the ancient sages of the 100 schools of philosophers likely spent most of their time in hibernation. Thus, most affairs were passed down to the great sage cultivators to handle. It was apparent that those two had a rather high position in the great frontistery of Confucianism. The sempiternal realm consummation expert standing at the forefront of the group shot a sweeping gaze across the crowd before speaking with a booming voice. Welcome. You are the most outstanding descendants from the clans of the 72 sages in this generation, and I believe that you must have put in a lot of effort in order to come this far. However, the resources we have are limited, and I believe that I need not say anything more about the recruitment criteria of our great frontistery of Confucianism. We only open up 100 slots every year, and this year won't be an exception. This year, we have a total of 2,143 applicants, which means that only 1 out of 20 of you will be able to join us. You'll have to put your lives on the line in order to be the ones standing at the end of this intense battle. If you are afraid, I'll allow you to step out right now. The great frontistery of Confucianism is only accepting 100 people. Zhong Xian frowned. The 2,000 applicants who had gone there were all incredibly talented individuals who had reached Saint Nine Dan in their 20s. On the master-teacher continent, geniuses of this caliber would indubitably become powerhouses in the future. Yet, the great frontistery of Confucianism was going to eliminate so many of them at once. Was this examination not a little too strict? Noticing Zhong Xian's bewilderment, one of the two youths beside him spoke up. Didn't the clan head say it earlier before coming here? The great frontistery of Confucianism has always been this strict. Besides, isn't it the same for our clan? His name was Fan Xiaoxing, and while his cultivation was beneath that of Fan Xiaoshu, he was also a Saint Nine Dan pinnacle cultivator. What's the same? The selections. There is an examination for us every single year, and those who fail will be denied cultivation resources and cultivation techniques, thus losing the privilege to cultivate. Have you forgotten how many battles we had to go through in order to come this far? Fan Xiaoxing shook his head with a bitter smile. How could I possibly have forgotten all of that? I just can't help but feel a little melancholic at this harshness, Zhong Xian replied with a slight smile to cover up his astonishment. To hold examinations every year and deprive those who had failed of their cultivation resources, was it not a little cruel to enforce such rules within their own clans? Was Kong Shi's goal not to nurture every human to become powerful, independent experts? If so, Why would the 100 schools of philosophers intentionally deprive their own people of the resources required for them to grow? The examination this year is slightly different from the previous years, but it will be much simpler than before. I believe that every single one of you has noticed that the mountain in front of us have been sealed. This mountain will serve as the venue of your examination. Before entering the mountain, we'll have every single one of you wear a teleportation jade token in front of your chest. As soon as you crush it, you will be immediately teleported out, thus losing your right to enter into the great frontistery of Confucianism. You are free to make allies and make a move on others. There will be no restrictions on that. As long as you are one of the 100 survivors remaining at the end, you will have cleared the examination and earned the right to enter the great frontistery of Confucianism. The sempiternal realm consummation middle-aged man standing at the forefront of the group above reiterated. We'll be immediately teleported out if the teleportation jade token we are holding is crushed. That's unfair. If someone skilled in concealment hides himself as soon as we enter the mountain, such that no one is able to find him, won't he be able to clear the examination without battling at all? That's the same for those who are skilled in formations. If he sets up his defenses well, no one will be able to eliminate him. What if everyone hides and we don't eliminate others? Such discussions sounded from the youths beneath. They had thought that the examinations would take on the same format as previous years, such as a round-robin tournament or some sort of trial, but who could have known it would just be a mass elimination battle? There's no need to worry. Since we have already set the rules, there's no way we'll allow that sort of problem to occur. The great frontistery of Confucianism will be dispatching an enforcement squad to eliminate those who hide or proactively avoid battles. Furthermore, the duration of the examination is only 6 hours. If you are unable to reduce your numbers to 100 people by the end of this duration, we'll deem all of you to have failed the examination. The sempiternal realm consummation middle-aged man said. 6 hours. Enforcement squad? Everyone's eyes widened in astonishment. There were still some who had been thinking that they would be able to exploit the rules to clear the examination with ease, but they dared not to harbor such thoughts anymore. To eliminate more than 2,000 people within 3 hours was no easy feat. In order to ensure that the number was reduced to 100 people by the end of the duration, they would have to actively seek out individuals to eliminate. Furthermore, if they dared hide, they would risk being weeded out by the enforcement squad. In other words, if they wished to be one of the 100 survivors at the end, they would have to try their best to eliminate others. The sempiternal realm consummation middle-aged man looked at the crowd after explaining all of the rules. Are there any other questions? No, the crowd replied resoundingly. The sempiternal realm consummation middle-aged man waved his hand, and an elevated platform materialized at the center of the crowd. On it were several thousand jade tokens. Verify your identities and claim your jade tokens, he instructed. One of the youths took the lead and walked up to the elevated platform. He bit his finger and squeezed out a droplet of blood on the elevated platform. Wang. There was a slight buzz as a line of words appeared above the elevated platform. Ancient sage Zi Qi. Who? With the acknowledgement of his bloodline, a jade token flew over and pinned itself to his chest. Following which, the second youth walked up to the elevated platform. Their procedures sure are strict. Seeing this, Zhongxian could not help but pat his heart in relief. It was fortunate that he had knocked out Fan Xiaoxiu in advance to disguise himself as the other party. If he had not sent Zheng Yang and Wei Ruyan away, their disguises would surely have crumbled in the face of this verification method, thus putting the 100 schools of philosophers on their guard. The crowd around Zhongxian slowly moved toward the elevated platform, and soon enough, it was finally Zhongxian's turn to claim his jade token. He squeezed his blood on the elevated platform and successfully obtained a jade token too. Fan Xiaoxing and the other youth, Fan Xiaofeng, then went up. In less than an hour, all 2,000 examinees had claimed the jade tokens that they would have to lay down their lives to protect during the course of the examination. Good. Quickly head over to the mountain. As soon as the last participant steps into the mountain, the 6 hours will officially start ticking down. The sempiternal realm consummation middle-aged man in the air waved his hand grandly. Voila! The seal around the mountain opened up, and the crowd swiftly dashed toward the peak. Those who first headed in would be able to claim the advantageous terrain, thus significantly boosting their chances at clearing the examination. Fan Xiaoxing and Fan Xiaofeng were intending to rush right in as well, but they felt someone tugging their clothes from behind. It was Fan Xiaoxu. It's likely that we'll be forcefully separated after entering the mountain. Find somewhere to hide first. I'll come looking for you. Zhong Xian noticed that there were teleportation formations set up along the perimeter of the mountain, so it was likely that examinees would be randomly teleported to various places on the mountain. Otherwise, if those from the same clan huddled together, it would make an unfair battle. Hide. Fan Xiaoxing and Fan Xiaofeng frowned. In truth, the three of them would not form too powerful a force even if they did group together. They would just become a larger target for others to attack if they huddled together, so they might very well fare better going off on their own paths. Listen to me. I'll make sure that all of us clear the examination, Zhong Xian said confidently. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. Since he had knocked out the real Fan Xiaoxu and assumed the latter's identity, he should give something back to ancient sage Zikai's descendants in compensation. Seeing how adamant Fan Xiaoxu was about this matter, Fan Xiaoxing and Fan Xiaofeng hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. All right then. Zhong Xian also did not bother explaining how he would go looking for them after they went into hiding. Instead, with a light smile, he swiftly flitted over to the mountain. Hula! Light burst forth from the teleportation formation and shrouded his figure, causing him to vanish. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.